I'm going to call this meeting of the Recreation and Park District Board of Directors to order. We'll start out with our flag salute. Marissa, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Sure.
Thank you.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have the roll call, please.
Director Huffer.
Yes.
Director Lang.
Here.
Director Cuthworth. Here. Director Nichols.
Yes.
Director Buss. Yes.
Thank you very much. Item 3, I don't believe we have any special presentations. Item 4, items from the public. I do have one speaker card. Carol, we don't really have a podium or anything, so if you just want to stand up where you are, Carol. Actually, you can probably even do it staying seated if you wish, so.
Okay.
Okay, tonight I'm here to continue the discussion about the Caneo Senior Volunteer Program and the bullying that I experienced there. I want to start out with a little story. I was a consultant, worked for this big company, and we decided we're going to go fix this little startup. And it was supposed to be an easy thing. And it just got really frustrating because things didn't get finished. So one day I went into my boss's office, and he was like this big monkey muck. He had a cabinet, 10,000 people working for him. And he decided, well, he wanted to do some stuff with the startup. And I was just so frustrated. I said, why is this project so hard? And he just, in all his wisdom, he just looked at me and he said, let's get you have a bunch of people who are really trying to make it fail. And I just oh, wow, it's just all of a sudden in my early part of my career, I just got it. But it was not difficult because it's a difficult thing. It's just there's so many people who are trying to make things fail. And I think that's really what went on here. Why is it that you can't fix a bullying situation in 10 years? Why is it that bringing in all these people and nothing gets done? And it's because you have too many people who are working to make sure that I continue to be the target because of what I did about the yarn. So I just wanted to bring that up because I know this seems repetitive, but this actually did go on for 10 years, almost every time I attended these knitting groups, which are volunteer groups, not like somebody's fighting in the lunchroom or something, okay? So, but there were also violations of space where not only were people told they couldn't sit in certain places, but they were limited as to how much space they could have. I had people who would go through my knitting bag. I've been carrying this kind of style of knitting bag for over 10 years. And I still had people going through, pulling through my yarn, taking my stuff, telling me that I couldn't take stuff. And that happened with a number of people through the years. And then one of the problems is when I asked the managers, the people who were doing the CSVP and RSV programs that intervened in this, I think they must have spoken to Pam because she stopped dealing or interacting with me in a verbal way. It was no more verbal sparring or anything. It was, it all kind of went underground. And that's when the physical bullying started. It also coincided with my inability to walk really well. And what would happen is just something, too, I never saw as a consultant, which is when someone's ghosting you when you're right next to them. Like, that doesn't really happen in the industry because you have to deal with people, but it's like these people thought that if they're not talking to me, that somehow I can't hear them. They would make fun of me right in front of me. I'd be sitting right next to somebody, they'd be making fun of me. And with the physical bullying, too, since you got a person who's not talking to me, they won't be out of the way if I'm walking by. And I have trouble walking by. And since they're not talking to me, they're also not responding to the fact that I'm there, and they won't move. So I had to kind of skirt around and can't walk well, and I'm fat, and everybody's crammed together, and, I usually bump into people. And then I get this kind of a, like bump into it, but it's just like she could have moved. We didn't have to play this kind of space game where, almost like, chicken in the hallways. The hallway's pretty big. Most people, when they see people in the hallway, they'll say hello, and you go over to your side, and they go over to their side. And it just wasn't happening. again, it was something I really hadn't experienced before in industry, but I also hadn't experienced it before when I was able to walk really well. So a lot of the physical bullying happened, after I was not able to walk. So anyway, that pretty much continued until, I think about a year before the pandemic, and then that stopped abruptly, but then what happened is that different forms of bullying popped up after that. And I'll get into that next time, but what I want to do, can't keep track of time.
Have about 1 minute, Carol, if you could wrap it up.
Okay, so last week I talked a little bit about Janet Adair, who was really friendly and helpful until this happened, and she used to do a lot of stuff for Ann, and again, Ann was the person who would do a lot of Pam's bidding, because Pam was a talking thing. So she would put me in a corner and she'd whisper, and then Ann would, do the verbal part, attack me. And before all this happened, Janet was really nice. And then she just got, really rude to me, and she wasn't helpful. I quit going to her for help because I couldn't get any help. But people were trying to get me kicked off the roster, and every year they would print the roster, and my name wasn't on it. So I had to go to the office and they do it. But I never went when Janet was there because she wouldn't, I'd go on Tuesdays because, the people there were helpful. But also, when I left the CSB program, and I was kicked out of the CSB program, I was told by Patty, and it was even a letter, that this wouldn't affect any of my other situations at the senior center, and that is absolutely not the case. On November 7th, I was getting lunch at the cafeteria, senior lunch, and Janet Adair was working that day. And I thought, oh, okay, I'm in trouble now. She really gave me a hard time, and this wasn't the first time she did that with me. One time when I was going to a recognition event for CSVP, I asked about accommodation for disability, and she just said, I don't have time for that. She wouldn't even answer it. I mean, it's not like you're saying, can you do this for me, or will you reasonably accommodate? She wouldn't even answer if it was accommodated. So it's sort of like if somebody's like the wheelchair or whatever, you want to know before you go to a meeting, is there going to be accommodation? You need to know, is there going to be an elevator or a ramp? So you bring what kind of walker or what kind of cane you want to bring. It seems like a reasonable question, and she wouldn't answer it. But what happened in the break room, I think, was truly shocking, even for me.
Carol, if I could ask you to wrap it up. You've gone a little bit past the typical 3 minutes,
So I will cover the rest of that next time.
Okay.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, item 5, approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion for that. From someone?
So moved.
Thank you. Could I get a second?
I second it.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the agenda?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Item 6, consent calendar. A, approval of minutes, and B, approval of warrants. Yes.
Yes, I move that we approve the consent calendar A and B.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Any questions or discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. We have no deferred matters. Item 8A, amendment of existing option and site lease agreement with Verizon. Is this?
I'll take this one.
Thank you very much.
So thank you, Chair Huffer, members of the board. The board approved the Verizon cell site back in 2008, so there's an existing cell site on the property. If you look on page 35 of your packet, we have a site map. There's 3 components to that cell site. We have a subterranean vault, as well as a backup generator, and then we have poles on a sports lighting pole. We have antenna and equipment on a sports lighting pole. And so if you look at page 47, there's details of what we're looking to propose for the third amendment of this. Basically, on the pole itself, they're looking at expanding the equipment. So there's a existing elevation and a proposed elevation. So existing on the top, proposed on the bottom. So a bit more equipment on there. We are going to be getting some more monies for that due to the visual impacts on the pole. So typically, it's around $250 to $500. This one, it was deemed $250 due to the amount of equipment that they're adding to the pole. The lease agreement will continue to run with the existing option and leases that's there for a total of $3,797. So it would just bump up the lease rent. We're not extending any time. The current lease would end in 2033. Is the current term is, so they're going to be there for a while longer, and then we'll get a benefit of additional funds for that. So with that, I'm available for questions.
Yes, Director Cusworth.
I was just curious, so they're giving us some extra money because of the visual impact on the pole. Are we doing something with that money to cover up the pole, or is that just like, I know we're having a visual impact, we'll give you money?
So really it's the pole's range sizing, depending on the diameter of the poles. Sometimes they can fit equipment where it's a little slimmer, but depending on the equipment that they're putting on the pole, if you look on the exhibit, they're actually swapping out equipment that's underneath a shroud at the higher portion of the pole. And then some of the equipment that can't be covered by a shroud is at the bottom of the pole, so it's on the lower end of the pole. So it's kind of a mixed design improvements that they're doing there. So some of the stuff, you can't even tell that they changed anything, but since they are adding and putting more of a, I guess like a sail or a visual up above on the lights, then that's where we deem that it should be more money, since they're bringing in more equipment to the
Okay.
Nellie, I might add, just as a philosophical approach, the notion of us collecting rent for someone being on our property is, hey, you're going to have to pay whatever kind of close to market is. And so when we give them their approvals, it's almost like we shrink wrap, a saran wrap approval around whatever it is they ask for, and we approve. And as soon as they start poking stuff out, trying to make that get a little bigger, we have a conversation about, rent.
Okay, so this is just really a rental agreement. It doesn't have anything to do with giving us money to disguise the extra height of the pole. That's what I was wondering. It's just basically a rental agreement.
Right, and the design itself still has
Yeah,
a
they
shroud.
have a shroud.
It's just bigger. It's just, instead of this wide, it's this wide,
Okay. So it's just a matter of space, but we're not. When it said the visual impact, I was thinking that we were having to get the 250 so we could disguise the visual impact, but it's really just the size.
Yeah.
Is what we're talking about.
They're leasing space within the park, and so from a market standpoint, that's the typical.
Okay.
Is the pricing that we put together. So similar to back in the fall, I believe it was 4 generators. They take up a footprint. I believe those are a couple hundred square feet per generator. So because that's a little more tangible, where hey, you're taking up square footage on a park, where it would limit what we would be doing. And so this is up on a pole. It's not just a standard pole, but someone's looking at a visual impairment. So that's kind of the market standard to be able to get some extra funds for that. So and those funds do go back into the district for capital and other expenses.
Sure.
So
do you think that people are this is a big enough visual impact that neighbors are going to complain? Or do you think they'll even notice?
I don't think they'll probably notice. Yeah, it's very minimal. Like I said, the top portion falls within the existing shroud. So you won't even know, other than the guy being up there for a day or two, swapping stuff out. And then on the lower portion, it's a couple shoe boxes, really, of what would be under there, compared to what's there now.
Not a huge visual impact.
Yeah, especially a lot of times, too, if something's already existing, you won't even notice that there was a change unless you saw someone doing work on it.
Okay.
Director Lang?
Yes, and one of Nellie's comments about complaints from neighbors. Do you know how many of these units we have throughout our park district?
I should have looked that up for a total. We have dozens of sites.
Right.
And so a couple like this is the only one at Orchard. But I believe we have at least 12 to 15 throughout the district.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, my follow-up question, have we ever had complaints from neighbors about the visual impact of some of these telecommunication poles?
Yes. Yep, and typically when it's a new installation.
Yeah.
It's because it's something that's new and changes their view shed and depending on the property and things like that. So, and we try to take that in consideration when we're doing these, try to incorporate it into sports lighting versus putting a new pole up that doesn't have it. So, being courteous to the neighbors, like any project that we do, so.
Thank you.
Yes, Director Nichols.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two questions. Andrew, with existing cell tower sites, what triggers additional review by the city for any modifications or changes?
Yeah, so they'll have to go through and get building permits and approvals. They have to follow all the rules and regs of like for federal telecommunications and things like that.
Yes.
From a planning standpoint, it might, just like if it's a new cell site, I don't think it would warrant a planning commission hearing or anything like that, but they still have to go through, just like we would for any new improvement on a park site that needs a permit. So they would go through that process, so.
Okay, and this, what we're looking at tonight is in advance of that request to the city?
Yeah, since we're the landowner, before they can move forward with doing anything, they need to get our approval.
Okay. And then secondly, you mentioned that they are swapping old equipment for new equipment. Typically with the sites that we have, I know this technology is changing almost on a daily basis. Do we know for a fact that they actually take down old equipment when they don't use it, or how do we track that if it becomes obsolete?
So if they don't take it down, they're paying more, because if they're adding more, they're paying more. So it wouldn't be in their best interest to leave it up there. And no, I'm not a cell site expert. But it's a factor of, hey, just kind of walking through the process, what exactly are they doing and what's the change? And that's why we really look at like these elevation drawings in the plan sections to really see, okay, what's being swapped, why, and how can we kind of minimize the impact to the park site? Because we go back and forth a couple times, typically before we would bring anything to you guys, just because they try to push it a little more, and
Sure.
we try to slim it down a little more.
Sure.
So trying to work with them on that. So, but yeah, they wouldn't just keep leaving stuff out there because they would keep paying us more money.
Sure, that would make sense. I saw one of the sites that I looked at years ago. It was a huge vault, probably the size of this table, that was initially built, and when they modified it, they had like a couple little panels on the side, but they still were leasing the entire area just to be able to have those two little wall pieces there. Okay, they didn't know, whatever, obviously they gotta have their system working, so. That makes sense though, if they wanna save some money, they take it down.
Yep. And then to give you guys a heads up, I am talking to another provider at this site. It would be in a similar location, and I'll bring that back to you guys for review when the time comes, but we're just in the initial talks and conversations, so.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion regarding the staff recommendation.
Go ahead.
Director Cusworth?
I'll recommend that we authorize the general manager to approve the third amendment of the existing option and site lease agreements with Verizon Wireless for upgrades.
Could I get a second,
I'll
please?
second that.
Director Nichols? Any discussion or questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 8B, consideration of a grant of easement for Edison. Still you?
Still me.
Okay.
So the Del Norte Park property is an undeveloped park site. It's east of Erbs Road off Sapper Street. It's right behind, there's a church property, so it's right behind the church property if you're not familiar. Currently, Edison does have electrical lines running through our property as well as Casca, as well as private property and the public right-of-way in the general area. Edison came to us asking if we would review a possibility of an easement on the property due to adding some additional equipment. So with the power shutoffs, there's certain circuits throughout town and just overall development through all of Southern California that is linked to needed utilities. This one is linked to the neighborhood, so if they shut down the neighborhood, it's also linked to the water pump for the city water station that serves that neighborhood. And so the goal is to be able to have it switch off where they can turn off the neighborhood, but then the pump can still run so people can still get water. So that's why we're taking a look at approximately 2,000 square foot easement along the frontage, back of the street or back of the curb, if you will. We've done this recently at Oak Brook Neighborhood Park, where they have some infrastructure within a developed park site. We typically take a look at it to make sure that it's not, one, affecting future use, but two, not affecting current use. Since there is no current use at the park site, we did assess and take a look at how this would or would not affect, and we made some tweaks and worked with Edison's engineering team to make sure that we're moving the equipment as close as possible to the existing pole that's there, and being able to kind of open up possibilities like for the future. So, and we're doing a one-time fee of $20,000 based on a $10 per square foot cost for that. So, with that, I'm available for questions. There are exhibits on here. Page 55 has kind of an overall like site location exhibit, and there's a little bit more detailed plans beyond that. Page 59 in the upper right corner of the sheet kind of shows you kind of the layout, but there's a lot of buried runs that connect to the switch, also connect to the power pole that's there. So, yeah, I'm available for questions if you have any.
Director Cusworth.
So I have a visibility question again. So is this a house directly across the street from that?
Yes.
I'm looking.
Yeah, there's 2 or 3 houses across the street from our property.
So what does this look like?
So if you go to page 61, there's a cut sheet of their underground structure standards.
So that's what my question is. Is this underground?
And so a good portion of it is. So there's a vault that's, let's see here. The actual enclosure is 5 feet by 10.5 by 7. And then the vault is significantly larger than that. So there's a manhole cover. So it's probably overall the size of a small vehicle, but that's buried. That's the vault. And then there's a larger utility box sitting on top of that.
So it's not really an eyesore. Like this isn't going to change the value of any of these houses or have anyone, because looking here, I didn't know like what it was exactly going to look like. So it's really not a big deal.
It's just kind
a
of
little square thing there.
Correct. Yeah. So I mean, it's
and then the rest is underground.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, so by the cut sheet, you can see the larger portions underground, but there is a decent-sized utility box that would be there. So
but it's just a utility
access.
box thing. All right.
But it's a 5 foot by 10.5 by 7. It's not a tiny box.
So how high is it? Is it 5 foot high or?
Yeah, so it's about 5 foot high, and then it's 10.5 feet long.
Director Lang.
Yes. Andrew, is this a modification and Edison is most likely gonna start doing it at other locations?
Possibly, yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of typical. We have a switch, because I had to work around it when we were doing our reclaimed water at North Ranch Neighborhood Park. So there's a switch in that neighborhood already, whether that has to tie in with like the golf course or like the fire station or the other houses. We have them throughout the district. I don't know how many we actually have, but you know, some of them are smaller in nature, and then some of them are larger, depending on what it's supplying. So
It makes sense, you know, based on maintenance and other controls, and I was just curious. Thank you.
Yes, Director Nichols.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually had a few questions that I submitted to our general manager, who submitted them to Mr. Mooney. But I want to ask him again for the record, but also for the benefit of my colleagues here. And if you can't remember the answers, I can read those too.
I was prepared.
Right. What plans have been considered for the development of this park site?
Sure. So there are currently no plans. Due to the size and location of the site, it's categorized, though, as a neighborhood park. So we don't have any plans. It is listed in our master plan to serve the neighborhood as a passive neighborhood park.
Okay. And I'll continue on, and then we'll go from there. So what amenities could be placed at the park site if it were developed then?
Yeah, so it'd be typical neighborhood park amenities, playground, shade structure, walking paths, fitness areas, courts, restroom, tables, and benches. So
Okay.
very, very passive in nature.
Okay, and then what
Can
site?
I just follow up on that question?
Oh, jump right in, yeah.
On that specific question, are the neighbors in that neighborhood served by some other neighborhood park, or is there some reason that we do not have any plans in place for developing this park?
Correct, yeah, and so it's kind of it's a dead-end street, right? So it would really, it's a dead-end street, and it's on the east side of Herbs, so it'd be a little tricky to serve anyone west of Herbs there. And I guess I could pull it up, but off the top of my head, Old Meadows and Caneo Creek North count for their neighborhood parks. You could argue further north to Sapling Trails as well. It's out of that planning zone technically. But those are the two parks that are closest to that serve as their neighborhood parks per our master plan.
Okay. Thank you, Director Nichols, for letting me interrupt you. So I wanted
Please, no, that's the whole idea, is to generate
so.
some conversation here. And then what is the topography of the park site?
It's sloped. Yeah, so it's on a hill, so it would be a bit of grading, depending on how we would develop it and design it. So, but it is sloped.
Now, I actually went out to look at the site. I'm pretty familiar with it because I lived in that neighborhood for over 30 years. Walked by it many, many times. Walked through it many times. But it's sloped, but it's just gradually sloped. And because it butts up against the church parking lot, and then it's actually almost level at the lower part, and increases a little bit, and then even more so at the top end. So it would require some grading, but at the bottom end, it's fairly flat. So with that in mind, if you were to develop a park, almost like what was done either at Sapling Trails, I suppose, or you can make it more natural, or at Page Lane, where you incorporated some of the features into the sloping terrain. Would that be the type of development that you would envision for a site like that?
Yeah, we always try to take advantage of existing conditions. I would maybe argue that's not natural topography, since how they've cut into it to build the church as well as the neighborhood. But yeah, no, we would definitely, we look at just like trees, we look at that as an opportunity. So the topography, look at it as an opportunity to be able to do that. And actually at Page, we engineered that opportunity for the mound, just to give the flat side a little more character. But that's something that, yeah, we would definitely take a look at.
Okay, all right. And then why has the park site remained undeveloped?
I think being here for 7 years versus, the district's been around for 60 years. I think it's based on need. How master plan has been developed, it's actually very park rich in that area. Maybe not directly for those few neighbors, as far as like being able to walk over to Caneo Creek North and to Old Meadows. But when you really look at the numbers, per the current master plan, we need about 11.5 acres, and we have 50 developed acres in the general area that would serve that. So it's the opportunity and balance to be able to provide for the neighborhood. Just like Page, we were deficient over 14 acres, and we were lucky enough to be able to develop a 14-acre park, right? So to be able to kind of balance it. And so with that, as well as access constraints, it's really only serving through one street versus having development all around it.
Yeah.
And then, so location, size, it's only 3.7 acres. So there was other opportunity elsewhere in the district to develop more for more people. And then that way, it would just be for just more sufficient. There was other opportunities, so it didn't get developed.
Okay.
So.
And I think the general manager said in his email that the park has been owned by the district since 1965. So it's almost the life of the district. It's been 60 years.
It's our third property.
And never been developed. And I can understand why, because I want to say 2 streets, it's 1.5 streets that would ever use that park, because no one wants to cross Herbs Road to get to it. There's nobody else on the other end of Herbs Road, and I don't know how many people are gonna be walking down La Granada, down Herbs to get to this park. So it would be a very rarely used park if it were ever to, and it's on the end of the dead-end street. Please, jump in, yes.
Director Lang.
Okay.
Doesn't sound like the neighbors are clamoring for a park there. So is this potential, is this a potential excess property that maybe could be developed into another house, couple homes?
I mean, yeah, we could,
Possibly.
yeah, I mean, we could declare property surplus. You have to determine there's not a need, we have to make some
Right, I
findings.
understand,
And then we have to offer it to affordable housing developers. So that's then who you next have to offer it to, and if they're not interested, then other government agencies.
Yep.
And then eventually we could surplus it, so.
Okay, it was just,
Yeah.
Listening to the discussions, it's been there since '65 and, so.
Yeah, no, there's private property ownership between that property and Sapui Trails, and I've always been curious what might ever happen with that, 'cause it's a fairly large piece.
I think it's zoned
Yeah, it's a big
potential.
big property that's
It's like
between
13
like
acres, I think.
Sapui Trails and that property. Looks
Yeah.
like open space, but it's
Yeah.
privately owned land.
Is there, I know there's gotta be some kind of maintenance, weed whacking or something associated with it?
Yeah, so just, it would be, brush clearance as needed.
Brush clearance, yeah.
Based on offset, but I think, because the neighbors as well as the church are farther away, there might not be that much, because it's 100
I think
foot.
it's just a little bit off the
Yeah,
street,
it's
not
probably just the frontage, for the neighbors.
I think you can see on some of the older,
The aerial.
aerial photos, just a little strip there along the street, yeah.
And it was our fourth property acquired.
Director Pestworth.
So my bottom line is, regardless of this park, if we did decide to develop it someday, it's not going to affect this easement, is it? Edison can still have the easement
Correct, yep.
so it really doesn't make any difference.
we had easements across other properties and,
Sure.
yeah.
So it wouldn't make any difference. If, say, in the future, this area that's in between Sapui and this park becomes a lot of housing, and then we would deem, now we have access to the park from the other side, and we have a lot of people here, we could put in a small park if we wanted to, regardless of the easement. The easement has
Correct.
no consequence at all to the development of that park, if there became a need, so that's it.
Director West.
Yeah, it's interesting you asked those questions, because I was thinking the same exact thing. I used to live in that neighborhood as well when I was in junior high and walked to Los Cerritos. So I walked down that Herbs Road quite often. And that area, I can't believe was ever, I could see why back in 1965 you bought it, but now you would never develop a park there. You can't even access it from where I lived in the neighborhood in Kevington. It wouldn't make sense. And then the easements stay with the property forever until Edison would say they didn't need it. But even someone who was going to buy it, they're going to be, a lot of people's homes have easements on them. So I don't think it would deter if we did decide to sell it, because it doesn't really benefit the neighborhood to build a park there.
Yeah, but even if we decided to, if in the future we wanted to build a park there because the neighborhood changed, like I said, if this easement is not affecting this park in any way. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. For the future, for the present, this easement is not hurting the park, other than a small little box.
Okay, so you said we have more than sufficient parks for that particular area. Director Lang talked about surplusing it and the things that have to be done. I'm wondering, because there are some areas where the new housing is going in. I don't know if any of that property is owned by the city, but one other possibility would be looking at a land swap between the park district and the city. If there was some property that the city owns that we need to put some park in because it's an underserved area, and I don't know what the city would do with that, but one thought that occurs to me is the city purchased the old school, and I can't remember the name of the school.
Hillcrest.
Hillcrest Christian, and I don't know if they can use that existing building or if they're gonna have to demo it and
Demo it.
Be gone.
restart, but that building is sitting right next to our little itty bitty park. And I believe that's one of the lesser underserved areas in our district, particularly as new housing goes in. Perhaps if the city wanted low-income housing or affordable housing, if you did a land swap with the property over there or some other property, I mean, as opposed to trying to sell it, the land swap might work to get us where we need more park space.
Sure.
They're building affordable housing.
But, I know it's a plan.
Yeah, but housing behind
Yeah.
the church.
Yeah.
I did have a couple more questions. Oh, go ahead, jump in.
No, I just to say, to stay with the topic and move on.
Yeah. Why is the SE project being entertained at the only improved street frontage for the site, thereby precluding future access to the site?
So they currently have utilities. They got two poles with overhead lines as well as buried lines running along the street in parallel with the street. And so it just connects into the system. So rather than putting it all the way back in the park, they have to have a bigger easement, have possible future impacts for if we swap the land or sell the land or develop a park someday. We felt get it as close to the existing utilities as possible to minimize the impact. So.
Are those existing utilities underground or overhead lines?
It's mixed. So there is overhead lines, and then I believe there is a conduit that comes down and connects into the buried system in that area.
And is that buried system in the public right-of-way or on parkside property?
I believe the majority of that's on the public right-of-way.
As I would expect. So that was one of my concerns, is this would be a major encumbrance, in my personal opinion, to the potential use of the site, or, as I was also thinking, surplus. May not be a visual intrusion, but it would certainly be a physical intrusion, precluding the full proper use of that as a surplus property. So that was another major concern I had. And then lastly, I think you've already addressed this, but why should the district entertain a permanent development of an improvement to an undeveloped park site, thereby restricting future uses for the park site?
The public benefit, working with Edison and the city, serving their facilities and being able to give flexibility to the system with the electrical issues that we have throughout the state, especially Southern California.
Okay. No, and I think the reason is certainly worthwhile. I don't object to that. But my main concern was, as an undeveloped park site, and now we're putting a development on it of sorts, that is going to, be an encumbrance on the future use of this site, whether it's a park site or other words, concerns me, especially when we have no plans to use it, and we don't know what would be there. And I also was thinking, if we haven't used it in 60 years, we don't need it because there's no deficiency of park site, and whether we could swap it or something else with the city or school district or whatever, that they wouldn't want to have this encumbrance in front of that, nor would anybody else if it was going to be purchased by a private party. And that's why I would say I would be opposed to this, and if we're not going to use it, let's surplus it, either swap it with somebody or sell it and use the money for another park improvement. But until that's decided, I would not want to encumber it with an easement that's in perpetuity and right on the very frontage, the only street frontage to actually access the property. So I actually don't think I can support this.
Director Best?
I have a question. So they're separating it so that the water pump will still work, correct?
Correct.
So in the Thomas fire, the electricity went out and the water pump didn't work for the firefighters for the hydrants, so they couldn't save a lot of the houses. Is this, because that's my only concern with this, is this a water pump that then services the hydrants that they plug into too, technically, right?
So I don't know all the details of that. I've had conversations with Edison as well as Public Works saying that this would help them with their situation. So I didn't get into details as far as if it's strictly for emergency water use or just residential, but it's for the general area. So I would say yes, it is.
Because it's a high fire zone area, neighborhood, so if it, that's why I was wondering, because when I heard underground, I was like, oh, so this is so in case there is a wildfire, the water pump will still work, so that hopefully then the hydrants will work when the firefighters show up.
It's a good idea.
Because that's one thing that I could see, if we didn't grant an easement and it was for public safety, it could come back on us. So that's one thing I think might be a
Yeah,
good
and the description you
question.
had in here, it sounded like their primary rationale was that in past when they do their, what do they call their emergency power shutoffs?
Yes.
That it shut off the neighborhood and the pump, that they want to be able to shut off the neighborhood but leave the pump going.
Correct.
But if we have a fire, it's all gone. This is not, it's not an emergency backup or anything like that.
It is to be able to run, technically it's an emergency in general for the area. I'm not saying specifically for hydrants, because I don't know the details of what that is all serving, but when they have a power shut off, this will allow them to keep the pump running when the neighborhood gets turned off. So it's a switch that's separating public utility versus private residential electricity.
So I want to just revisit my question I had before. Why would this easement make the property less valuable for us if we one day wanted to make it a park, or if we one day wanted to sell? It doesn't seem like it's that big of a problem there.
So, I mean, this is typical stuff throughout town. You know, there's private and public properties that have switches or transformers and things like that. But what Director Nichols is saying is because it's on the frontage, it's the only frontage, that it is a hindrance for multitude of possibilities versus it just being currently open the way it is with two poles. So. But
it could, I mean, it's in the frontage here, but roads could be built on this other side.
Possibly, yes.
And I mean, the frontage there's still quite a bit of room there. I mean, it's not taking up the entire park area. You're just looking at about, maybe a third of it there?
Of the actual street frontage, you're saying?
Yeah, the street frontage. It's not taking up the entire frontage.
No.
Well,
to the
street.
It's the only frontage.
Yeah, technically, yes, it's taking up all the street frontage.
But
But
it's not taking up the whole property. I mean, if somebody seriously wanted to do something, you could put in a road there.
Correct, yeah.
You're gonna have to do a lot of grading.
I think that.
It's very steep. In fact, when Andrew said that you could grade a road to the other side, you cannot physically grade a road. It is too steep over there.
You couldn't put a road over here.
It is too steep over there, and it's private property.
I'm just saying if it was eventually developed.
I don't think so, because the grade is too steep. I mean, just going down Herbs down there, the elevation change is too significant. You would be very unlikely to get a road up there.
So basically, because of that, because that's just there on that road frontage, you couldn't drive a car over there at all. There's no access to this park then.
Well, and again, it's a neighborhood park, so it shouldn't be drivable, it should be walkable.
No, okay, well, that would be fine, but he was just talking about if it was ever purchased for some reason. But it's probably not going to be purchased, but we're saying in perpetuity, that it's going to always be there.
Value the potential.
And like I said, my recommendation is to surplus it, because we don't need a park. We haven't developed it in 60 years. It's unlikely we would ever develop it. Why are we keeping it? Let's surplus it.
I would share the experience we had trying to surplus the Safra property just down the road.
Yeah, Morrow Circle.
It became open space.
Which separate property?
We went to the board, thought we could get $500,000 for the Safra property that's right near Jantz and Lagranat and Herbs. There's a church, and then there's a big hillside that's empty.
That's so steep you couldn't do anything with it.
You could have built apartments at the end of the cul-de-sac at the lower level, and one house at the upper level to just mirror the existing built thing.
I've been at the end of those cul-de-sacs.
We thought we had a deal, so the neighborhood came out and decided that was sacred open space, akin to Yosemite, if I remember one of the comments.
Oh, wow.
So,
I didn't realize.
So we ended up thinking we were going to sell something for $500,000, and the board, we ended up giving it to Costco for free. So, not saying that would happen in this case, but sometimes just leaving a sleeping dog lie is just fine. you know, at some point, somebody might come and say, this could really make sense if we had this and let's make a deal. But I think just overtly going and trying to dispose of some of this stuff, it doesn't yield the kind of revenue that you might think, in my experience.
Well, and it's behind a church.
I would be surprised if the church would be interested.
Yeah.
I mean, after all these years, if the church really wanted it, they would have approached us, and they haven't approached us. And who knows what the future of that church and its property is? Maybe the new owner might want that property, who knows? A lot of unknowns.
Yeah, I think the neighborhood would definitely come out if we put it up, and they would.
Well, they might.
Yeah.
Then they can buy it.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be nice.
Yeah.
But I could see exactly what you're talking about happening again.
I don't think that it's right there, just in the kind of, it just goes up the hill, right? That's just open space right there.
Right now, yeah.
Yeah, I don't see it being developed myself.
I had another question regarding the location. In discussing this with Edison, was there any discussion about moving it further up the line where it's not the paved portion, but up above the
My understanding is they needed it, at the, pole, the lower, because there's two poles there, at the lower, and then two for accessibility. So it would be accessible for maintenance, but then also to be connected to that location on the pole based on their circuitry.
Okay.
All right, thank you for answering my questions.
Any further questions or comments? That's longer than I anticipated. Okay, if there are no further questions or comments, I will entertain a motion about staff recommendation.
I'll make a motion
Director Lang?
that, we authorize the general manager to, work with Southern California Edison on this, easement, Del Norte Park.
Thank you. I have a motion. Is there a second? Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nay. Okay, we have one opposed, 4 in favor. The motion carries. Let's see, item 9A, discussion of CRPD and its mission, vision, and strategic plan, continuing what we started at the, McCray Ranch. So Mr. General Manager will...
Yes, thank you, Chair Huffers and member of the board. So now I want you to just take a breath. We're supposed to get in that retreat mindset again, like we had at the McCray Ranch. We don't have the ambiance, and although we're not in the regular boardroom, we intentionally came into the park room to kind of feel a little more relaxed. And we want to continue the work that we started. So, you know, attached to the agenda was a link to the strategic plan itself, but what we handed out again tonight was the same document that we handed out when we were at McCray on February 2nd, which covered the district mission, philosophy, vision, and then it went through all the major elements in the strategic plan, so there's 8 of them. If you remember, we went through mission, vision, statement of philosophy. We got through 3 of the 8 elements, and then we ran out of gas. And so
Because I was sleeping.
No, we spent a lot of good time on it, and so we want to kind of pick up where we left off. So we want to kind of get into that mindset, and I might, as you're kind of starting to think, okay, the next one up is partnerships, and we're going to kind of go through that SWOT analysis with partnerships. But before we do that, I'll just, as a quick kind of get us back in that headspace, we made a minor tweak to the mission statement that we will bring back with a red line strikeout when we bring the whole document back for a first pass, and you guys will get multiple bites at the apple. And I don't expect this as a final document to come back to you until the fall. Our goal is to be ready to go January 1. And then we went through the vision statement, and we actually had a variety of changes there, and thank goodness for Aline, because she's got our tape and good notes on what tweaks and changes we made. And then we went into the programs, facilities, and finances, and we kind of went through that SWOT analysis. So, and it's just a good way to think about what we're doing under that element and, you know, our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So, I'm planning to continue to go through with that process and have, you know, either Andrew or Rochelle pick up the marker and try to go through that with us. But I'm also open to other ideas on getting through it as well. Oh, and we also redistributed. Doug did a nice job of giving us, you know, his detailed thoughts on the strategic plan. So we handed that out again, so you have that. And then you provided them. Everyone got their fresh strategic plan as well. So you actually have the strategic plan. Mine looks like it's
Changes that we said for last time?
No.
Okay.
So yeah, no, we haven't. Yeah, so those are just clean strategic plans. So if you want to follow along with the actual all of the goals, we didn't want to get too into the weeds on each and every goal just yet. We really wanted to focus on the element and the objective, and then just kind of what do you think we're doing and whether we're doing it well. But you know, feel free to kind of look through here and get a sense of what we are doing, and if you have some specific suggestion on the goals, that's okay to get to those too.
So I just wanted to say one thing, because we had kind of a little discussion on the statement of philosophy, and I don't know if it got in, but I wanted to say people of Canal Valley. And we had kind of discussion on what was in the Constitution or what was on the Bill of Rights or something, and so I read them all, and so...
The Constitution and the Bill of Rights?
Oh, the Constitution, and I think, you know, what was the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
So I found in the Declaration of Independence, it said we the people, but by the time we got to the Constitution, when we were the United States, it said we the people of the United States. So when it was just the people, it was talking about people in general, humanity, humankind. They were saying these are the rights we should have, and King George isn't providing it. I just didn't like the wording of that, and if it wasn't put in Eileen's notes, I'd really like it to say people of Canal Valley. Just to go along with government documents so that we are thoroughly following. So, yeah, that was just awkward. And the other thing is we had another big discussion about when we were on facilities. At the end, it was agreed that we would put a link to the district's master plan online. So if people read, implement the district's master plan, there would be a link so people could hit the link to go to the master plan if they wanted to read the master plan.
Should they so desire.
Should they so desire, if anybody even goes onto our website. But I just know when I'm looking through things and I see something, there's always a little link, and I oftentimes highly appreciate that little link because it will take me to another document, if somebody so desires.
Yep.
And that's not difficult. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that those two things were in our notes. And then where did you say we were going to start at, the partnership?
Partnership.
I just follow up with what you're saying. I have no objection to that, but I just was curious because I think Jim had mentioned that this was taken from some of the, like, original statements of the formation of the district.
I could walk down my office and bring you a piece of paper from 1963 that is the dusty old original statement of philosophy.
Oh, okay, but, I just remember you had sent me all those original formation papers, and I didn't see anything like this, because I thought, oh, well, maybe it's in there. And I didn't see that in there, so I just was wondering where it came from, but she said it was statement of philosophy. But I just was wondering, at that time, was this area called the Canal Valley, or did people refer to it as the Canal Valley?
Were there monies then?
In
Well, they made us a Canal Valley.
Yeah.
Valley,
Was that one of the options for
Canal
naming the
Recreation.
city?
Oh, I don't think so.
I think it was. I think Canal Valley was one of the.
Yeah, but that was in the
Yeah.
1920s.
No,
When they were.
No, 1920s we were made Thousand Oaks. It was Timberville. Newberry Park was Timberville.
No.
It was in the 1920s. It was a contest at Canal School, and a boy submitted the name Thousand Oaks, and that's how
it was a place name. It wasn't a city.
It was just called Thousand Oaks, not the city.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what it was.
John Moran really brought it to the...
Newberry Park was originally called Timberville, and then it changed to Newberry Park when the Newberries left, and they moved to the post office to the Stagecoach Inn Museum, which was in that area. So then it was called the Newberry Park Station Post Office. So it just kind of became a name for Newberry Park over in that area because of the post office. And so if the Newberries had stayed, Thousand Oaks might have been called Newberry Park, because
Probably
their
would be.
property was over at the Civic Arts Plaza, but since they had to leave because they went bankrupt, the post office, which was the first name here, because we had the post office started here in the late 1800s, and it was called Newberry Park Station. So,
This is a plug to go to the Stagecoach Museum,
oh,
Always.
so that we can know
Always.
as much as she knows.
That's
from
right.
us. Oh,
I
my
can just watch some of the videotapes that are on there. But no, the name Thousand Oaks came. So it could say we the people of Thousand Oaks, or it could say we the people of the Conejo Valley community, or the area of Conejo Valley, but I don't know. I think we probably did have the name of Conejo Valley, but I'm not up as much on that as I am on Thousand Oaks and Newberry Park. But I could look it up.
Keep in mind that technically Thousand Oaks excludes certain portions of Lang Ranch and certain portions of Newberry Park.
So no, I didn't want Thousand Oaks ever. It could be Conejo Valley, because this is Conejo Valley. I don't know when that term actually came, but I'm sure this has been called Conejo Valley for quite a long time.
I think most people know our district as Conejo Valley.
Right.
It doesn't make any difference to me, but I just think we're nitpicking, and we the people. That's what's been understood, forever, as far as I know.
Yeah, we the people of the United States, but let's just leave that. If this is a huge contention again, I'm not willing to argue it.
I wrote it down.
Okay.
And then Doug, I heard you say you were okay with it, so I wrote, of Conejo Valley.
I just was referring, when you just said it was something historical, I thought, well, if we're trying to keep it from something historical, but if this is an updated version, then no problem.
Well, we are changing things. It is an updated version.
Yeah.
Right, then it's a working document.
Yes.
All right, move along.
So we're through the first three, we're gonna get right into the fourth, which is partnerships, which is personally one of the things I think we shine at in reaching out and working with others, partly because we're poor compared to the other government agencies. We have about a $30 million budget, and the school and the city have about a $300 million budget, so we're about a tenth the size, so we get a lot more done when we work with other people. As evidenced by our wonderful teen center opening. So under partnerships, our objective is to collaborate with other entities in order to fulfill the district's mission. So collaboration is kind of built into our strategic plan. Our strategy is to identify, evaluate, and develop beneficial relationships. And then the goals that we have are kind of listed 4.1 through 4.7 in the strategic plan. So it generally talks about every other government organizational opportunity to meet with is something we're supposed to be working on, how the current document's written. So one of you guys want to be the strength? Okay, so Andrew's going to do the partnerships. And so just as we think about CRPD and how we can, what do we do well, what can we do better at, that kind of thing. So what do we do well when it comes to partnerships? Like, what do you like about what we are doing?
And this is,
With our
just jumping
partnership.
in, folks, this is no longer a formal meeting where you have to ask permission to speak, so.
Okay. I think we do a good job with some of the local nonprofits, Safe Passage, City of Thousand Oaks, which is a nonprofit, the school board, Right On.
I mean, we have examples large and small.
Yeah.
I mean, the city is a huge partner. They've given us millions of dollars to complete a lot of projects, but you have the, complete other end where we just signed a one-year agreement with our, what's that silly sport?
Cricket.
Cricket, thank you. I didn't say silly sport. With the cricketers, for Newberry Park.
That's a good news.
And I mean, two complete different ends of the spectrum. So we've got partnerships of all shapes and sizes.
Yep.
Yeah. The nonprofits.
So diversity of partnerships, so like a broad, wide, diverse partnerships.
And I think that a lot of those partnerships go that we're very generous with our land and letting people use our land. But then they will, like with the community garden and things of that sort, they're using our land, but we're, having
Yeah.
a community partner out of them, plus we give them money to maintain their organizations, because they're all nonprofit organizations, aren't they? They use our land, all of our community partners?
Or a government institution,
Yeah.
nonprofit or.
Yeah. So I'm saying not only do we let them use our land so that they can build community groups, which I think really strengthen our community, but we also yearly offer them grant money so that they can maintain their area. So I think that that's been beneficial for our community. It's been beneficial for us because our land is being used well. And it's beneficial for these community partners because they are getting land at no cost, plus they are getting money to help, maintain their organizations.
I think all our community partners benefit, even including the city. Our improvements enhance the city's appearance, its utilitarianism and use it and so forth. So everybody from big to small benefits. You're getting in, particulars, property, et cetera, and grants and other things. And I think that just goes with a good partnership that we have created over the years.
Yeah, but it is truly a partnership. It's not just these partners using the land, but they're improving the lands and they're maintaining the lands, making it much better than if we were just taking care of them ourselves. So
I think the Park District almost acts like an incubator in some places where some of these smaller organizations where we kind of provide the opportunity, and then it becomes like a multiplier effect where it's our input, our, either amenity or facilities, their creativity, a little bit of our finances, a little bit of their finances and sweat equity, and pretty soon you've got much more than either organization could have done by themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
Total
the Collaboration is a
collaboration.
perfect example. I mean, none of that would be there with all the folks that put in the sweat equity for that.
And they're willing to do it because this is their baby. This is what they're interested in.
And like the preservation of history of the area, like with the Stagecoach and then with the Chumash Museum, I mean, both of those are great because if we didn't have those, then people would move here. Or even if you grew up here, you wouldn't know when you were little, So I think those are wonderful opportunities.
Well, and I think also with the city, the fact that the Global Center and the Teen Center, that's a huge partnership, and I'm going to be paraphrasing something that Grant Brimhall said when we were somewhere. I guess at the Teen Center opening? No, he wasn't there. It was somewhere. And he said, I just love this because, I've seen a lot of other cities where they open teen centers and they all fail. Do you know why they fail? Because cities don't know how to put on these programs. And we needed to have the parks come in because they know how to do it. So we can have the building, but if you have the parks running, it goes, and ours are thriving because we work with people that know how to run programs. And so I think that has benefited the city, too. I mean, again, we're running the programs, it's their buildings, but we're running programs because we know how to make it work because of Michelle's fabulous staff. And that's what they do. And they're saying, let's let people do what they know how to do it, and work together so that we can make this work for the betterment of our community.
Cool.
And then also with the pools, with the school. They're not using them all summer usually. So then the community benefits. We're running the pools. We don't have to run the pools all during the school year. So it's like when the pools are needed for the schools, we're not there, but then when the school's not using it and the community can use those pools, then we are there. So it's an excellent partnership that we have, that we could continue doing with some of the school grounds. Not all of them, but some of them.
Well, and partnerships take work, and you guys are doing the work. You're the ones reaching out to your colleagues and keeping those strong relationships with our biggest partners, city and school district, by far the two biggest partners. But, those personal relationships are what kind of keep the partnerships going. So important to, keep connections.
One of the takeaways that I had from Friday's event, going back in history, when the Park District, City, and the school district often, at least once a year, got together and, whether it's over dinner and et cetera, and it just had the feeling of camaraderie and collaboration and family and so forth. And I felt that Friday.
That's awesome.
And I think we should probably look for other similar kind of events that would create the same environment, the same interaction, and so forth. We need it.
Mm-hmm. We do. Okay, weaknesses. What is maybe a shortcoming in our partnerships, or something that you might, and if you don't think of one, that's okay too, but like, is there a shortcoming with our partnerships, or some?
An opportunity or a threat?
Well, I would say an opportunity, and again, I've talked about this so much, and I don't know how to make it happen, but there are a few parks where we could be using some of their school grounds when school's not in session. And I mean, parts of schools that are already fenced and have access to the public that could be used on weekends and summers when school's not in session. I mean, it doesn't have to be when school is in session, and it wouldn't be the entire schoolyard. It would just be portions that wouldn't be affecting the buildings, that would really benefit the community.
Mm-hmm.
So the school district, I don't know if you followed their agenda.
Yeah, it's like I swear that's.
Yeah, I can maybe try to find their agenda items, but they've had 2 agenda items in the last 6 months. They did 3 elementary schools as pilot projects, keeping them open when the school wasn't open. Like, I think weekends and after school, or
Yeah.
just weekends?
I know, it's after school, too.
After school and
I just read
weekends.
about it. I was like,
So they've
that's
got,
terrible.
It's in the paper.
yeah, so they
That's
had
why.
3 that they started with, and now they've added a 4th
They
and
added,
5th,
they
I
added
think.
Westlake on weekends.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so the school's just doing that on its own.
Okay, so it is happening.
Because I don't know if it's your conversations with your fellow electeds, if the school board's just thinking differently based on parent input, but there's definitely
So how,
a bit of a change where they're starting to go back to where they used to be, which was
Yeah, I was
allowing
gonna say,
people.
they used to be open
Yeah.
when we were
yeah.
down.
Yeah,
Well, I think they became afraid of, vandalism in the buildings, so is it because they have better alarm systems in buildings and things now? Or is this the buildings are not, a part of it? Cameras? I know my school now, every classroom is wired and the police will be there. I know because I climbed over a fence and opened my classroom and the police showed up on the weekend. I didn't know, and I thought, oh, it really.
On the weekend?
I climbed over a fence.
We've
Well,
got
when
people
I-
using trails illegally.
I was gonna say, I thought I was bad.
What type of people do we have on this board?
Oh, it was my classroom. The policeman came and said, were you in room 30? And I said, yes. And I said, I have a key, it's my room. And he goes, the alarm went off in the police station, but they didn't used to have that.
Mm.
So that's why it surprised me, because this was something that I, was used to doing. Well, at first they gave us a key to the fence, then they took away keys to the gate. They took away our keys to the gate. How else are you gonna get in? If you have to get something from your classroom, or water a garden, or get silkworms because you forgot to take the silkworms home. I mean, these are all vital things. But anyway, but maybe they're having better security in the school buildings now. It would be interesting to know if that's one of the reasons they've changed, because I would understand them not wanting to have their buildings vandalized.
Yeah, but this would be a good
Having
opportunity, under the opportunities, is just, if you see one of your school colleagues and, hey, that's really cool you did that, because I'm hearing good stuff about it.
So I'd like to, I guess we could look back into the school board meetings to see where they did this. Which schools were they?
Well, Westlake was the most
Westlake was
recent.
the most recent, yeah.
It was Westlake Hills, wasn't it? Not Westlake.
I thought it was Westlake by Russell Park.
Yeah, Westlake.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
I thought.
Yeah, Westlake,
Yeah, but that's
Hills.
Westlake Hills next to Russell Park.
Yeah, there's Westlake Elementary,
Yeah, I'm
and
sorry,
then there's Westlake
yeah,
Hills.
I think it was Westlake Hills, because they
Yeah,
talked
it's
about
in the
the,
hexagon.
yeah, they
Yeah,
talked about
that's
the
Russell Park. Yeah,
kids
that's
wanting to
Westlake
use the
Hills.
basketball courts and things like that from
Yeah.
the neighborhood, and I think,
Right.
And the whole
Westlake.
neighborhood's built around it.
yeah, Westlake is kinda, it's in the neighborhood, but you
Westlake
gotta
off
go
by
around to
Potrero
get to
Road.
it, so it's
Yeah.
not quite the same.
All right, well, I'll look into that, because that's something we've talked about, and I have talked about it with board members, so I'm glad to see that they're doing that. I mean, I'd still like to see pickleball helping in Los Cerritos. I don't know how that could ever happen, but I've talked about that before too, but there may be other issues.
Well-
But it seems like things are changing to where that's happening again, and that's great.
What about with the, Adelante, do we have any partnerships with them? I mean, I know we have Safe Passage, so we do, we have already, partnerships with them.
Well, it's largely through, our connections with Safe Passage. Do we directly do anything with Adelante?
America works with them directly on a couple of things with Los Feliz and the apartments and stuff.
Okay.
There at Shadows. and they
Yeah.
helped set that up, so America does directly work with her.
And they do the
Better.
food distribution on Buyer Park.
They do, and America has assisted with that.
Well, and maybe
on her
bringing
own.
like the mobile van for programs to that community would be, I think that that's a great opportunity that we have. And even there's also some other areas, you know, throughout that, just because they're not in apartments doesn't mean that the families have a ton of money. That would be, I think, some of the older neighborhoods where we could bring in the mobile van and we have parks there, you know, like over, where my dad lives, off of Burtonwood by Glenwood. You guys just redid the park right there. That neighborhood is an older neighborhood, and so, you know, you have a lot of families in there that may not have as much money to take their kids, but they may, you know, that park is right there.
Well,
You have so much access.
the van is going there, I think, next month. Yeah, next month. I looked at the rec van thing. I didn't go. I was gonna go to Page Lane. I didn't know if they were still doing it because of the rain. Did they go?
It got canceled,
Yeah.
and then it's pushed back. It might be this week. Well, we'll see, but
Yeah. But I was wondering, I don't know that we would want to do this if we were partnering with Safe Passages in Adelante, if we would want to take the van to a location that wasn't a park. You know, like she was saying, maybe in an apartment building, or maybe if Safe Passage was having an event at one of the apartment buildings. Would that be appropriate to take the rec van to one of those?
Opportunities to take the
You put it as
mobile
an
van
opportunity.
and, yeah, I
In two
mean,
neighborhoods.
we're, looking
Well, yeah, 'cause
at lower income or
Because
areas that are lacking parks possibly.
Yeah, because the condominiums there, they have like that rec room where they do all the distribution in that cul-de-sac. I mean, so they have a space even though it's in a park, like you're saying.
Yeah, they're very involved with orchards, but yeah, I mean,
They've got a lot going
Yeah.
on there.
It's just something to think about. It may not be something, but it's something to think about.
Weaknesses or threats?
Well,
One, weakness that occurs to me is ease of entry for new partners. You know, unless you really push hard, like the cricket people had to push really, really hard to get a little bit of space and a little bit of time. And the same thing is true for the pickleballers, that, you know, they've been pushing and pushing, but they feel like they're not making a lot of progress because there are all these other established, entrenched organizations around town.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as far as weakness, I sense conflict and animosity from those underserved sports or athletic groups, or whatever that happens to be. You know, the sense of favoritism. I mean, that's the kind of the general feeling that I get. So there's a, you know, conflict. So, you know, whether that's just in the field allocation realm or just not having a spot, like even rugby was another group that approached me.
They've been around a long time, rugby, trying to.
Yeah.
Mark Jacobson was.
And, you know, just, you know, when you get
there.
a smaller, you think, well, they're smaller. Well, they're smaller because they don't have a field to use. You know, if they had a field to use, then they could get big too. So that's, again, I think one of the challenges we face.
But I think.
Which is a good problem, because we got a lot of activities and, you know,
Right.
and the fields
We
are being
don't just
used.
take anybody, they have to prove themselves, like the cricketers. You know, they were around a long time, they kept working with us and discussing options.
Yeah, and so
So
what
it
we've,
proves to us that they're a worthy organization for us to continue to invest time and money into it. So
well, and.
I don't think it's frustrating, I'm sure, for these small organizations, but not all, we don't have all kind of property that we can, you know, share. We're limited. Well,
Yeah, and so I think we've been taking measures to make space more available, because, you know, if you look in the long haul, it was only 10 years ago, 12 years ago that we even started charging anything for fields. It used to be zero.
2012.
It was zero. So people would order, like, people in the field allocation would say, okay, I'll take these 6 months, that's Little Leagues for the next 6 months, no one else is on the field. And eventually we went to a fee for field and required people to give back their time. Wanted to make sure the fee was high enough that it was in their financial interest to give back the times they didn't use. And then all of a sudden it was like, we can say yes to that club baseball program. We can say yes to that, just dad who wants to practice an extra couple hours with the kid. So we have started to, but frankly, we could, a solution, and we're not into solutions here, but, you know, we could start charging more and more, and then the people that really want it will use it efficiently, and I'm guessing we'd have even more people turning back field time or making sure their practices are super efficient, which then allows us to let another group pay and use it.
I would say, to clarify, the weakness is that we have as much property as we do have, we have a lack of property, that we cannot serve the amount of clubs and sports and groups that are out there. So, to me, the weakness.
There's more need than property.
There's more need than property, and, yeah.
Can we put pickleball courts on the Del Norte Park property?
Well, that's ours, I'm like, well, yeah, what about, and over at Page Lane, there was like a lot of land that was only like walking. But pickleball, I get rugby, what was that noisy? It's like soccer.
No, when they dig in, they rip apart a field, it just gets super thrashed, so it matters where you put them, because when they dig in and they do a scrum, you look and it's a mud bog where they were, and so it ruins the grass until you, however many months until field refurb, you got a mud wherever they play.
You also
They have great post-event parties, though, so.
you have to also look at accessibility, because if you're gonna have a lot of teams, you've gotta have room for a lot of people to park. And, you know, is there gonna be night games, is there gonna be night practice? I mean, you know,
Yeah.
it kind of depends, like Page Lane, that wouldn't be good, because it doesn't have like a great incoming and outgoing, it's all neighborhood all around there. They're not gonna wanna have a huge amount of cars parking there to have big, you know, tournaments.
And Page was like a tennis complex at one point, and it converted, is it on there?
It was supposed to be a tennis
Yep,
complex?
look at the top right.
That's Caneo Creek South, north and west before,
2 dozen fields in the top
before
right.
Chuck
Court.
and his buddies, the Citizens Group
Well, that
came
goes
up with a
back
different plan.
What, well,
So it just evolved in time to a neighborhood park because of the opportunities and constraints of the property.
call it a senior center and a youth something. What is this?
Yeah, so anyway.
Are there threats for this one?
Oh, parking.
That was like a bubble diagram dream
We were
before.
gonna have a polo field?
And a lake.
What happened to that?
Actually, we do have a few lakes out there right now.
What
Wait,
what year was that made?
Probably the 80s or 90s.
Would've been the
dog
80s.
park area? Wait, where?
You guys were 1999. The Citizens Group created the master plan in 1999.
August of '73.
Yeah, so that was like one of the.
73, okay, that was 73.
Oh, this is,
So, because I'm trying to think, I mean, we moved here in
the theater,
1980.
the theater is there.
It always seemed like the soccer field.
You know, they did a master plan and they just said to the community, whatever you want, we'll put it on this map.
It's a collection spot, huh?
So, yeah,
We
and
can have the
so,
theater and we can have the rodeo, same place.
so anyway, people dream and we then have to get to real stuff. So threats, do we have anything threatening our partnerships? Are there
Drought, although it was kind of.
problems with relationships, with,
Well, I don't know if this is a threat, but I was looking into, before when we wrote this, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, whenever it was, and one of them was 4.6, it said, build and maintain support relationships with local organizations engaged in activities with the district's mission, and look for collaborative opportunities to expand services and fill unmet needs. And one of the things, and down here it was investigate whether there may be this is the one I wanted, mutually beneficial partnership opportunities with the senior adult living facilities. But we sort of found that it's not a threat, but they already have all of the programming that they need. And whenever we would talk to them, it was like, so, I mean, it might be something to just take out. I don't know if that's.
yeah, I think you're right. We have looked into it and
There's not a need.
That's part of their draw.
Their
Yeah,
draw
they have
is the
that.
amenities and the things they have, and then often they'll say, and we want to take a trip to the senior center once in a while, so they'll come visit us, but they don't want to necessarily have us go there to do all their programming.
Right, they have their programming, and so it
Senior
seems,
center is the draw for all the seniors here to age in place and not have to leave their homes.
Yeah.
So that's like
yeah,
the bigger, those are mostly the seniors that we service.
yeah. So that's what I'm saying. We were thinking, well, can we service some of these other seniors, but it seems like there's not a need for us to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that
then
could probably.
also the other one, what, I think I put what, meaning like So what specifically are these relationships with the local organizations? Are there other, other than our community partners, are there other public organizations that we would be working on?
Part of the reason for that was to be very generic, leaving the door open for possibly partnering with other than public and nonprofit organizations, i.e. companies and corporations.
So I was wondering, have we done any of that? Because that's been 5 years ago. Is this anything that we've found that we are doing? Because I hadn't really seen that we had done that.
For a little while, I believe we were doing some programming, and I can't remember the name. It was Kobe Bryant's,
Mamba, which is.
Yeah, we had
Academy?
some stuff going on with Sports Academy.
They're an independent contractor with us,
Yeah, they do stuff now.
and they
Before
rent
that,
the property.
Caneo Creek, south of Jan's, there was a sports group here trying to get, before the big soccer fields got developed.
oh, this was Gilbranson.
Sportex.
Came in and wanted to
Sportex,
make the super
yeah.
park.
Yep.
But
We do
our,
partner with Jan's Mall. Jan's Mall, we work with them, and they give us space in the summer for our therapeutic units at.
okay.
Yeah. So like consistent with the mission is really what it is. So like if somebody's doing something similar to what we're doing and we're like, hey, 1 + 1 = 3, like we'll figure that out. But we do get occasionally a call from someone saying, hey, I want, that property that doesn't look like anything's happening on it. Can I have that for maybe a pro football team's complex or maybe a pro hockey team's thing? And, well, the public gonna get into it? No. We'll give it back to you in 30 years and whatever's left, maybe you can keep. But no, this is not gonna be for the public. So we get people that wanna take our land and do something recreational privately for it, but we have yet to find something that feels, if someone came to us with a, hey, it's going to be open to everybody, roller skating rink, ice skating rink concept, and said, we just need the land and we'll figure out how to have this thing open, we'd probably entertain a conversation. But so far, the only people that have talked to us have been wanting to take it for some very private, typically pro kind of athlete.
Are you saying that we could get a bowling alley again? If it's open to the public?
Bowling alley and ice rink would
We
be
start
nice
with
again.
lawn bowling?
I'll help you do that.
Roller skating would be better. I could do it sports. They could probably even have pickleball inside.
I didn't know you could do indoor pickleball.
We do it at Borchard Borchard for sure. Dos Vientos, we do it, Dos Vientos.
Well, what you were saying about Jan's Marketplace, though, that's exactly what this could be. You're saying they let us use the property. That could be.
We partner with them on a couple of different things.
Sure.
And they're.
What about the Oaks Mall?
Oaks Mall, we've done a couple things, during COVID. We did movies in the parking lot, and
You did the concert in the park there.
Concert in the park there, and then we also did during our conversations. They gave us space to have our community conversations, and we've,
All right, well, that answers the question.
Yeah, so
We are doing those things.
for us to do things.
So when somebody comes and says, we do something and it's not really our mission's awfully broad, so it's rare that somebody has something that's so not close to what we do, where we're just like, hey, good idea, but not really what we do. But that's when we'd probably look at the strategic plan and say, your mission is, scientific advancement, and although that's cool what you're talking about, we're like Parks, Rec, and open space. Although, now that I say that, we gave SOPWI, before it was SOPWI, we gave it to DARPA, which is the autonomous driving vehicles, the defense industry. They have a contest. Anyway, do you remember that, the DARPA permits? We were giving, kind of before, 20 years ago, before autonomous driving vehicles, anyway, we were renting it to a engineering firm to let autonomous driving vehicles drive all over SOPWI trails. Yeah.
I was thinking of a threat as being unrealistic expectations. When you have a bunch of partnerships, they expect that they're always going to have what they've had before, or perhaps more, and then there are others who expect that they're going to get a piece of the pie and they don't. So you're always trying to balance those expectations and fulfill those as best possible, but it's sometimes it can be a little challenging.
And another possible threat that occurred to me is, sort of we have built it into our culture, but over time, there are changes in administrative leadership and in elected leadership at the major partnerships, the city, the school district, and the park district. And the people who are here today, if we don't make sure that the culture is passed along to the new kids coming along, then, some of these partnerships may not be as effective as they are today.
Super important that we keep talking to our friends, for sure, absolutely.
Keep up with our board buddies.
Yep. Okay, do we feel like we've got partnerships covered?
Well, I have one other thing, that I was just thinking about when they talked about, because we sometimes have, like with bicyclists and stuff, a lot of people want to bring in, the motorized bikes, and I know one time they were talking about wanting to have, some, different kind of big ramps, and, over there in, Hill Canyon area, there's a lot of steep things. They wanted to bring in a lot of, competitions, different, ways to have parking, to charge fees to go on them so that they could bring in some, really major biking. That could be an opportunity or a threat. I think we've seen it more as a threat because we haven't wanted to, completely, ruin our trails and not have them open for equestrians and hikers, but then the bikers are kind of upset because they're saying, well, there's a huge amount of possibility here and you're not letting us, invest in that, so I think we would ever become violent, but we have to, as you were saying, we have to keep in our mission statement of what we are, even though that's recreational, is that gonna benefit the entire community? Or a large portion of the community, or some of the community?
It's a toughie.
Yeah.
E-bikes is a great challenge. Costco's kind of got the lead on it. Thankfully. They're doing a good job, though. There was a really good presentation at Costco about the different classes of e-bikes and what's going on with the trails and stuff. Organization. So the next two actually are awfully similar, but I was thinking, could we read them both and then combine them in terms of our but we'll try to keep them, we'll keep them separate, but we'll try to go a little faster. These are starting to get into the weeds of operations, which is fine, but there's similar organization and administration. But so the organization, our objective is to recruit and retain a high quality and motivated workforce. And our strategy is to offer competitive compensation and benefits, insist on a safe workplace, and provide opportunities for training and advancement, utilize sound management and practices and policies. So I guess under org, it's more about the workforce, and administration is, more about just policies and practices. So starting with organization and thinking about our workforce.
Easy one to start with is the threats. We can't do anything about the economy.
Got to work
there just aren't people out there.
So we got to work within it.
Yep. Work within the economy.
I think that, I could think of a threat for that is the lack of affordability in this area to be able to retain and keep employees, because you guys we need like a wide level of lower paying jobs that it is extremely difficult to live in this area on 60 to 200 grand, to be perfectly honest, for most families.
Could I ask a question of the staff on this? In thinking of this as a whole is one thing, but I'm also thinking of this in three components: full-time staff, part-time staff, and seasonal staff. When it comes to organization, I'm talking about recruiting and retaining. Would the SWOT analysis be best to look at the whole or to look at the parts? And I guess the question is, are those so distinct that it would be different answers up there for those different groups of employees? And I don't think the board would be able to answer that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, like, deliberately and intentionally, our seasonal are just that. We're not trying to, have someone start with as a lifeguard or camp counselor and necessarily make the assumption that this is their new career. It's cool when it happens, it's awesome, but there's just too many, like 300, seasonal people in the summer, and, we have 100 full-time people that 4 or 5 leave a year, and average, that pyramid does not work in any way, shape, or form. So a lot of what we do is give kids their first jobs. Mm-hmm. We give people great leadership experience at a young age. So I think that we do what I think traditional park and rec stuff has done all over the place is you give these great leadership opportunities to young people. That's generally your seasonals, I mean, not always, but generally. And you're giving them, their first job, their responsibility, a paycheck. It often feels like, because they're living at home, they have no other expenses. It's gas and In-N-Out burger money, and they're happy as a clam.
See, that's what I was thinking of. When we hear so many of these stories from staff, it says, I started here in preschool, and now I'm the administrator of the organization, And I thought, okay, and you just said it. It was like that first job experience. But I wouldn't think of that for you folks here. That, we provided you your first job experience. So it's just like I have to think of the whole group. For that seasonal or even part-time, it's that first job experience that is a strength.
It's a strength, and it's like we're mentoring and teaching a lot of people how to work, how to be, a functioning, they go on to do fantastic, great things. We've had people I know go and do really cool stuff, that we felt near and dear to our heart, depending on the thing, the theater people know who all went to Broadway and who's a movie star now. The aquatics people know who are, competitive, college athletes, swimmers. I mean, they know all that stuff. But, just like any organization, there's we just deliberately have a whole bunch of short part-time staff with the seasonal stuff, for sure.
But I think...
Can I add something on that? Are you all able to hear me?
There.
Hi.
Oh, hey.
Hi. I also wanted to say kind of on that is maybe it'd be under opportunity, but our class and comp process, I actually had a long conversation with our consultant the other day, and they're actually preparing work classifications that if they're not filled now, they could potentially be filled with that in mind to allow for the professional development of staff, not necessarily seasonal, but they're looking at the part-time that we're having them do to see if there's a natural progression that aids in the recruitment and retention of people to allow for that professional development. So you don't just go from entry level to administrator, but to make sure there's really a progression throughout the district. And that's part of what that class and comp is going to advise for us to consider for implementation. So that's a potential opportunity.
That's good. Yeah, thank you for that.
So they can climb the ladder.
Job classification progression.
It seems like a lot of people that we hire are from the area. Now, I'm just talking about part-time, but how often do we have people that are coming in from another state to work for us? Do we usually hire people that live around here somewhat, drivability?
Another state, I would say in California.
Yeah, none from another state. Our accounting system can't handle it.
And then, so most kind of are already living in California, so they're used to that. We're not.
The only people that would be out of state would be college kids that are attending college locally, and then they're working for us while they're in school.
Now, I'm wondering, last year you had a hard time hiring a little bit for the summer. Have you started hiring for summer yet? Is it better this year?
We're doing pretty good.
Okay.
So, we haven't gotten to the full summer yet, but yeah, staff have been at colleges, staff have been recruiting.
So they're
getting with you guys. I think the last meeting, what aquatics is doing and stuff. So I think there's an ad in, might be this Acorn.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, so we've got it all over social media, so.
And I was wondering, because I know with, minimum wage going up and those things in some places paying over minimum
We
wage.
pay over minimum wage.
You are, so you're competitive, because I know at school, they're having a hard time hiring aides, because a lot of people go, why do I want to go through all this paperwork and do all of this when I could just work at Target or work at In-N-Out Burger and make more money? So is that a challenge for us to keep up with wages? Because we can only pay so much, and then we're not
doing
making
good.
money.
We're doing well. The challenge right now is more the, how people think and act about jobs.
Okay.
Showing up to work, working for 2 weeks, decide they don't like, there's a lot of, different, like, environmental type stuff that is affecting the job force.
How do you phrase that as?
Hiring from?
How do you phrase that as a threat? What would you call it? I mean, what's the?
I think it's like a weakness.
A lack of
Work
commitment, work ethic.
So, yeah, and it's, I don't know that it's a generational thing, it's partly that, but it's as much a post-COVID thing is, you know, I've been doing a little bit of digging on this, and there is a sense of when COVID happened and people kind of re-examine and reprioritize how hard or what they're doing and why they're doing it. Sometimes the boomers really had it, you know, work before all else, and then you figure everything else out. And I think the most younger generations have started to figure out there's got to be a work-life balance, which frankly it's, you know, kind of like support that. But there's definitely a different kind of workforce. The boomers were definitely like the job number one, like you do your job and you do it well, and then you figure out your family and you figure out your everything else. And you know, there's just more of a work-life balance. If this job isn't fulfilling what I want out of it, the loyalty to an organization has changed a bit, that kind of thing.
Well, it's taught in school. When I was in Pepperdine, I mean, it was a while ago I was in Pepperdine, they were saying how if you stay with one company, your resume actually looks worse when you go to get hired. They want to see that you have moved organizations every 5 years to really move your way up the ladder. So that's like in business now. I mean, you have to stay versatile, you have to stay relevant, and if you stay at the same company for 30 years, it's not looked at like that anymore.
Well, and the youth, on the other side of that is the youth are, like, moving every 6 months or a year, so they're not even staying 5 years, so.
Yeah.
But, I mean, most of my workforce is part-time. It's a part-time job, it's a summer job. So they are gonna go off and do something else, and they might, if they liked it, come back, which many of my staff grew up and in the area, went to our program, went to school, went off, tried other things, and came back, so.
Yeah, and I think what I hear from the staff is it's a fun place to work, it's enjoyable to work here, which I think are strengths of the organization. You know, it has a positive influence on the employees and the staff, which helps for the retention. I also think you provide a lot of opportunities for cross-training, and that could be in the field work. You just, you know, maybe a guy's supposed to be an expert at plumbing, but he's doing electrical work at the same time because the need is there, and they start small. But at the same time, you get somebody working at one community center, they need help in another community, so they go over there, they learn something else from somebody else. And there's a lot of flexibility in the organization, which helps.
I think one of our
cross-training and just, you know, the creativity that has evolved out of that, I think is just a very positive for the organization.
I think we've been an employer of choice just by when we have our, you know, service awards and they do their presentations and things. Seems like we have, for our full-time and, you know, almost full-time staff, it seems like they stay around, they want to stay around, they keep getting promoted. We promote within quite a bit.
I'm curious with the field guys, because I know that, you know, tradesmen, like, we have a lack of tradesmen just throughout the nation, and I would think that might be more of a difficult position to find with people who have the skills that are needed, and then you have to train the people and have them want to start at a lower pay and be able to sustain living, because these aren't usually part-time employees. You're hiring more people who are full-time who have families to support. And so I would think that would be one of the hardest positions, because you don't maybe have a college education, but being a skilled tradesman is, you know, I just don't think our culture values it as much as they should. Do we, like, I think they make a lot less, and their skills can be really hard to replace.
Well, and you're dead on, and I don't know if it's happened while you were on, I don't think it happened while you were on the board, maybe just a year earlier, didn't we have to increase the salary ranges in the building maintenance?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that was just about a year ago, because we couldn't fill positions.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, we
you
had to.
can't live on certain wages, and just because you don't have a college education doesn't mean that you don't have skills that are extremely important, especially manual labor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to what Doug was saying as far as flexibility and kind of creativity within the workforce, being able to, we're fortunate where we have all these different types of facilities, so we have different experiences for our tradesmen, or I just call them pros in the field, you know, whether it's a irrigation tech, heavy equipment operator, electrician, all that stuff, to be able to utilize, you know, a grounds worker might be operating a piece of equipment, and so he's learning, and he's an entry-level grounds worker, or a two is learning something more than what they are typically supposed to be doing per se, but it's more kind of the growth within the workforce, which is pretty awesome, especially like me kind of being on the outside watching it and being around the guys and stuff, but it definitely comes to the fulfillment and the enjoyment of working here. And so all the opportunities and stuff for that growth.
Do you maintain most of your, do most of the staff stay? Do you have
Yeah, coming up, we'll have a 36-year employee, a 30-year employee, and a 20-year employee coming up in April, out of Park.
Yeah, we're doing the full-time service awards on our next meeting.
Next board.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I think we have 11.
So you don't
They're
have
long
a high
nights,
rate
yeah.
of people leaving once they're hired here?
Correct, yeah. So people, once they're here, typically, they stay.
That's what it seemed like
And
when
once
we,
you get into full-time positions in my field,
people usually
they
stay.
usually stay.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things we try to convey, and I think you almost don't have to tell people, but when you kind of express it, it helps people even like have it that much reassured, is our mission. The mission of our organization is a good mission. It's got great purpose. You have a direct, tangible sort of outcome, and you can take your family into the parks and show them what you've been working on or what you're a part of. You can show them what is happening in one of the programs and all the good stuff that's happening. And I think people feel that work here, like you get a sense that you have a important public purpose for the job. The public service part of it is cool. Absolutely, you're contributing.
So
All right,
on their
we good?
professional training ladder that they're gonna do for the comp, so then people will be able to, I guess, do we have like certifications that are needed?
Well, we
So
do, and we
when-
provide it, so.
So you have to get certified to be a heavy equipment operator.
And depending on the position, there's different certifications.
Oh, okay, so then they're working towards those, and then that training is just included, and it's not something that they have to pay extra for, it's provided by.
But we
Yeah.
cover a lot of the training.
Yeah, we cover a lot of the.
Various associations
Yeah. And
associated.
if I can add, there's also a few people who, if they have a certification, they can actually get an additional amount of pay on top of their hourly rate. And that's also something that our class and comp people, when they're looking at the benefits to other agencies, if it's like you have a similar job classification, but at that agency and your other competitor agencies, if they have these certifications and they offer kind of like, I think it's a premium pay on top of that, they're going to let us know that too.
Okay, that's exactly how the fire department is, so that's what I was wondering, like, the guys will do a bunch of training, so then they get a certain cert, and then you get certain percentages, or, add-ons for being things, so it's very similar then.
Yeah,
Okay.
so like our commercial license,
That happens throughout the
you
industry.
get paid more, and, yeah.
Well, that's great, that's a great opportunity then for people to get paid more even without promoting. That's cool.
There was a threat I wanted to add just because it makes
Yeah.
it keeps me up at night. AB5, we submitted all of our information to the state and we haven't been blessed or told we had a big problem, but it's just kind of out there. So we've submitted everything to the auditors and we haven't heard back, but if they came back and told us that our various instructors are actually employees, that would be a big shift for us. And so I don't know if it's going to happen, but it's a potential threat.
Did that latest ruling for the Uber and Lyft drivers have any influence on what you're expressing?
I don't think so, because it still goes back in our situation about whether or not we're controlling, if the relationship is controlling them. And so if they determine that we are controlling the work done by the instructors, then that won't matter at all.
And in the last year, when we all worked together, and so in my department, we have made some clear changes. We just don't know, like Melissa said, if they're going to be acceptable, but we very much had independent contractors signing new stuff. We have made it clear to staff that we step back, it's their job, it's their stuff. So there's probably a couple things that are a little funky, but we've got to clear, these are independent contractors, this are staff taught. But I feel like we're in a really good place. I think we've made adjustments and we're in a really good place.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
Absolutely.
Should we go to administration?
You guys want to move on to administration?
Yeah, because we've got
Similar.
three more things to do.
Yeah, so, and this one gets to, and I actually, so objectives to create, maintain, implement policies and procedures to ensure sound management of the district. So our strategy is to conduct periodic reviews, refinement, implementation of policies and procedure, and ensure the organization has clear directions for successful and transparent operations in an open, honest, and ethical manner. And actually, Doug brought it up, I don't know, more than a year ago probably. We finally got all of the policies between the board policies, all district policies, the Parks and Planning, so we actually have all that online now, and you guys have a link to it. I don't know if we need to remind you of that link, but we do, at least we've gathered them all and they live in one location, and Aline now gets whatever gets tweaked and we're keeping it current. So that, at least we have they're all in one location, and we do update them as we feel like we need to. You know, sometimes you for sure come across a policy that is awfully old and dusty and you wonder how is it that way still, but sometimes it's just because no one's ever had to look at it to try to figure it out for so long. That
I love it when they do that in Rotary in the fine session, all the old policies for in laws in cities.
Yeah.
And you're like, that doesn't make sense anymore.
Just a point of clarification here. When it comes to administration and objective referring to policies and procedures in sound management of the district, I know there are policies and procedures that perhaps the board would need to take the lead on to say, this is going to be what we suggest as a policy, perhaps with your input, for the district. But then there's also personnel management policies and procedures that I'm guessing may or may not rise to the level of the board. Is that to be distinguished in this discussion? Are we looking at personnel policies or district-wide policies?
I didn't make a mental distinction. I think that, so I didn't really make a distinction because I don't know that this necessarily does either.
Okay.
It kind of has a mishmash of even stuff in here. You know, it talks about our ordinance manual, talks about our strategic plan itself, it talks about our IT plan, our organization-wide and divisional administrative policy manuals. So those are the ones that often are just written. The divisional administrative policy manuals is Rochelle. It's like, how do I have to run rec? And Rochelle comes up with outlines and guidelines and has a nice, same with Andrew. So they have their own divisional policies that, affect how they kind of micro-operate. It's generally not, it isn't a board thing. But organization-wide, sometimes it's a board thing, sometimes it's not. If something comes up that isn't working, that you hear from the public for, and the board's like, why is that the way it is? Should we look at that? And maybe it was a policy that staff was using to run things, and because of concerns raised, you know, it gets into the board's realm, and we decide, okay, now the board's gonna kind of control it. Like, number of very large community events, right? We were saying yes to whatever we figured out we could logistically manage and what the calendar allowed for, and finally the board's like, we're tired of all the complaints, we can't have this many events, we're gonna pick a cap, it's 4.
Okay.
So that's kind of how that came about. We were just doing stuff that people came in and wanted, hey, you have a piece of property, I wanna rent it, how can we make this happen? And our inclination is to say, yes, let's figure it out. But, you know, the neighbors at some point are like, is this a soccer field or is this a fairgrounds? Like, what is this? So, and the board said, let's come up with a reason or let's come up with a policy to limit it. So that's maybe an example of where a administrative thing becomes a board level policy.
Well, I would say if we look at the list that Aline made, it's a minority of the policies and procedures have ever come to the board. Most all of the policies are done by staff. So I think that if we're talking about this, it would have to be including all of the policies done by staff, because what was there, like 10 policies or something done by the board? It was very few. In fact, I even called to say, how do I get to the second page? And they were like, no, that's it. And because I was expecting that there was going to be, you know, 50 policies or more.
Yeah, and I think like my section, they're best practices. They're not necessarily policies or procedures. The best practice, this is how, what we're gonna do. We're best practice.
And a lot of things would be procedures. A lot of times the board isn't overseeing an exact procedure that's done, you know, in, you know, facilities or programs. Nothing that we would need to vote on. We
Yeah,
could.
well, that's not really the board's role, so.
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying. So that's what I'm saying when it says
Micromanage.
policies and procedures. I think we're talking about ones the board has done and ones that staff have implemented to run their programs and to maintain the parks.
Yeah, because we want to make sure that our procedures and best practices, we are looking at them on an annual basis.
Absolutely.
And making sure we're following the laws or the whatever legal stuff is coming up. So that's stuff we do on a regular basis also.
Yeah. So I think that that's just in commenting on what Director Nichols said. I think this is talking about everything.
All right, thanks for that.
Yeah,
The open discussion.
so, you know, you have the list right in front of you, you hold it up, but, I don't know that we want to get, like, I think you have about 17, did you say? 17 board level ones that we pulled together for this list, so,
That's dating all the way back to 1964, isn't it?
some are old, some are not so old.
But anyway, I'm just saying, it kind of goes throughout the organization.
Yeah.
And a lot of these things you're really good on, you know, we're always updating, you know, job descriptions, you're always bringing that to the board.
Yeah, one of the big ones was it took us, I think, a couple of years of working on, we did the personal policy manual, you guys approved that
Yeah.
last year. That was a big effort.
Well, I was gonna say, the strength is routine review.
Yeah.
Continue to,
Yeah, routine review, that's a good,
whether it's, you know, annual for some things, or in this case, 5 years for the strategic plan, or make a policy of routine review.
yeah.
And often needs arise that dictate new policies or modifying other existing policies. And I think this board and its administrative staff is good at doing that.
Okay. Opportunities, threats, weaknesses.
It's not a threat, but for a weakness, I just wanted to highlight that we've had a fifth of our staff are new in the last year. And so training them on these policies and procedures is something we all are consciously trying to make an effort to budget for and make the time for to train those new staff, because they can't just learn through osmosis.
And along that line, Melissa, are there typical programs where you do have orientation for new staff to go through, maybe not all in an 8-hour setting, but, you know, as they progress in their first 6 months or first career, where you try to target some of these various trainings, so by the end of a certain time, they will have completed the necessary training for policies and such?
It's so specific by position that I think every administrator and supervisor has their own way of doing it, but I know that we're working with our supervisors to really emphasize that they take additional time to walk them through their steps, but it's going to be completely different for my new accountant than Andrew's grounds guy.
Okay, so it may not be the same time frame, but there is a process in place to go through those steps as needed by each position.
Yeah. I don't know that it's written, but yes, we do it.
I think some of the stuff's more like procedural, right? So you might not do something daily, weekly, monthly, it might be quarterly, or annually, like the rains and things like that. So it's kind of like procedural type stuff for our stuff in the field, right?
Okay.
So
We have a written orientation and staff do, but to the same point, there's some things that you have to kind of experience and go through it in order to do it. But the basics and the, you know, emergency procedures and shut-offs and sign-ins and how to work systems, there's definitely trainings.
cool.
Anything else for administration?
Write that down as a strength, that you have scheduled training for your...
I only had one more thing. I'm so sorry.
Turn her off. No.
The IT security stuff, it's just crazy. I know Mark, and if Cameron's in there, are working a lot. That seems to be the biggest thing that they're taking very seriously, and it keeps changing tactics and all of that. And Mark's really on top of it and has long-term plans to try to keep everybody, all of our equipment and everything safe. So they're working on it, but it is one of the biggest changing environments for us.
Thank you.
We're at this conference right now. They're warning us about a new surge of IT and cyber attacks from Russia and China coming.
Right.
Cameron, get on that.
Right?
He's already working.
Oh, man, okay.
5 years.
Okay,
Thing is, he's probably not joking.
yeah. Do you want to go to PR and marketing, public relations and marketing?
Sure.
2 more. And then 2 more, then the catch-all, then the, just what haven't we talked about? So there's technically 3 more, but, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, PR and marketing. Our objective is to actively promote the district and educate the community on opportunities that the district provides. And our strategy is to provide quality customer service and to utilize a broad set of techniques to effectively publicize the district. So, how are we doing? What are we doing well with our PR and marketing? What do you think we could do better, try differently?
I think you guys do a great job communicating through the schools as a parent who has children there. I get your flyers and emails, and I got an email today about Young Rembrandt doing a new session. I thought that was great that they reached out because my kids did it before. So I really think you guys do a good job with that.
I think we're improving in the...
No more you guys.
Oh, sorry, us.
You're us. Sorry.
I was gonna say, I think over the last 4 or 5 years, we've improved as a district as far as our public relations, PR, and communications and so forth. That in the past, it kind of just happened.
Well, you guys have given us resources to do it that we hadn't had in the past. So now, Rochelle, you have 2 full-time people working in that area, which when I first started, we didn't have any. We had 0.
Exactly.
When I started, we had a full-time and a part-time,
Yeah.
20 hours.
Yeah.
It was a low priority, we thought.
So are our classes filling up? Are we, I mean, is it working? Are people coming?
Oh, yeah, yeah, we're doing really well.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's always classes, as you see, you'll see canceled classes, but yeah, I mean, there are
Pretty much.
constantly new classes and stuff, and there's definitely, it ebbs and flows. Certain classes are real popular and others aren't.
I'm wondering if it's a threat if the people are still coming out of COVID and a lot of people, it's taking a while to kind of get out, or is that an opportunity because people are wanting to come out of COVID and they're doing more, which would that be?
You have numbers, like, you have a sense of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can pull numbers, but yeah, I mean, our classes enrollment are going well, but then you'll see things and we go, oh, we thought we'd get a lot more people at that, and we don't. So it's almost like they want to come out of COVID. Last year was really good. The numbers are still showing positive, though.
Yeah.
I mean, revenue-wise, we're almost, if not equal to 2019 at this point. So.
Because I thought it was interesting when you said that at the teen center they had more people at the dances. I took a video of the band, because when my son was a teenager, you know, he did the whole band, and they do Battle of the Bands at the high school. And he said that, yes, he remembers the teen center being absolutely packed when he was young, going to those dances. So I thought, well, maybe that takes a while. But you're saying on most things people are coming out.
Yeah, I mean, Global Center's very busy. Borchard throwing up all sorts of new classes. The summer program is huge. So, we'll see how many people sign up for it. But yeah, I mean, registration for spring went out and we're exceeding.
Okay, so that's not really a threat then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a public relations and marketing plan that you followed? I say you, because it seems like this is really more your realm. Okay. I was wondering about that, because when I was talking with Dan Nalbandian at the Teen Center, I asked him how things were going. He says, we're needing to do some work to get it back where it once was. He said, you know, before COVID, we may have had 300 or 400 kids at the teen center. He says, 10 years ago, we had 800. So we've gone from 800 to less than 100.
Well, you gotta remember, we've been closed 2.5 years.
Right.
Yeah,
So
there's definitely.
that's why I asked, so then what is, not that you have to have it right now, but what is the plan to do that, you know, and why was it once 800 and then 300 and then 100? You know, is there
We have a theory, I have a theory.
800, there wasn't as much stuff out there in the community for kids to do.
That could be.
And
Well, we still don't have a bowling alley, though.
Yeah.
Well, and they
No,
are,
this has a big, this is a
I
big
was gonna say, it's the fall.
problem for teen gatherings.
I was gonna bring up that I wonder if communicating to teens is somewhat of a weakness, because I know the apps that they use, I mean, even my kids who are in elementary school, and the communication apps are changing all the time, and I'm like, what do you mean, what's that app? Like, what, how are you doing that?
BeFriend or BeMonster.
Oh, there's so many, and so, you know, my kids in elementary are slower at it, and then I talked to my niece who's 18, and she's like, oh yeah, and Snapchat's old. I'm like, or she's like, did you see what your daughter put on Snapchat? I'm like, I don't know, what happened? So I would think actually it's more difficult to reach teens, like, in my day, right, you had MySpace and Facebook, and, you know, I'm dating myself,
And dating yourself in your youth. In my day, you had a phone.
But so I would think that would
We
be.
had hand-drawn flyers.
Well, yeah, right? So I'm thinking that, like, that could be an opportunity and a weakness, right? It's an opportunity because there's so many ways to communicate with these kids, and we just have to figure out what they're on to communicate. Hey, there's a dance at the teen center, and get that out to them. Versus, you know, it's also a weakness, because you're like, well, what app are you supposed to be on, and how do you get on it as being CRPD? Like, can you even have an account for it?
Yeah.
So then, yeah, like, I would think all of that would be kind of difficult, because they're on their phone.
Oh, we take trainings on the problems that children are having with teenagers mainly, but middle schoolers a lot when they're starting to get their phones. I mean, this is causing major problems for kids growing up. I mean, with their self-esteem, with their ability to communicate, with their social skills. I mean, so, yeah, the social media is wonderful until it's not, you know?
Yeah.
Having the internet and everything is fabulous if used correctly.
Right.
But we need to
Yeah.
use it to get them to be in person with other
Yeah,
people.
use it so that they're not using it.
Yeah, so that they're not sitting at home playing video games
Right.
Unplug
against each
to
other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
get kids to our program.
But
And so asking the parents too,
I was thinking that when you said that the school, well, the park district through the schools is doing a good job reaching
Yeah.
the children and the families. And I thought, okay, well, where are things going well? Obviously, that is one realm. You know, my daughter gets all the information she needs, but I also think the Global Center does a good job reaching the centers because they have a group. But then everywhere in between, I don't know what the system is that reaches that, you know,
Yeah.
either, you know, from elementary school all the way up to seniors, there's a big gap there that
Yeah.
there's really no direct contact that's reliable, per se. I mean, whether, you can't say do it, newspaper ads,
No.
an Instagram post, whatever. It's just like, okay, there's so many things out there, and then usually in that group, they have a niche that they're interested in. It could be soccer, it could be softball, it could be cricket, and that's their thing, you know. It could be knitting, whatever it is, and they just need that information, or they usually are connected if they're going to be connected. Maybe it's the Stagecoach Museum. So if they are already part of that group, then they're connected. But all the rest of them out there that may take a karate class if they knew that it was there, may take a yoga class if they knew it was there, but they don't read the flyer that goes, or the catalog that goes out, you know. How do you reach them, or are we reaching them, and they just don't care?
Well, and a lot depends on the parenting, because I know when I went to one of those, you know, teen summit things, they said to the kids, well, how did you end up doing this? Oh, my mom. Oh, well, when do you do this? My mom. You know, it's like, my mom is telling me what I'm having to go to. And I think a lot of kids on their own, if they don't have parents kind of telling them you have to go out, it's just easy for them to stay home on their phones or on their video games. And even at the teen center, they like to go on the video games, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
This was the first time I'd seen our computer room and our video games so packed while a concert was going on. And they had the kids that were in there, I talked to them, they had no desire to go to the concert. We're not here for that, we don't want to listen to that.
Yeah, I think, I know we mail out the programs. Do we ever do any sort of other, like, just postcard kind of follow-up direct mail that we could do people to, like, remind them for things, or even to certain communities? Maybe, you know, I know we don't print the program in multiple languages, but what about printing, like, an opportunity would be to print a postcard in different languages and mail it directly to communities, so that then they could have the QR code on it, and they could go to the website, and the website then transfers it, is my understanding, into whatever, we have different languages on there, or do we just have Spanish?
I think you have a ton on there, don't
We
you?
have Google Translate on our website, so the website can be any language.
Oh, yeah.
But the program guide is not, the PDFs are not subject to Google Translate, so that those don't translate.
Do we not have the programs at all in Spanish?
We don't teach the programs in Spanish. There's a section in the program guide, is that what you're asking?
No, not to teach the classes in Spanish, but to have them be printed in Spanish, the program guide, so then, or even just so you had it online. Because so you're saying they can go to the website, but then the programs are still in English, so it's like, you can read the whole website, but you still can't necessarily read the program.
Well, any of the kids could. The children are all bilingual. So if we're talking
Yeah, I was
about
gonna say,
teenagers.
the number of
kids
Spanish-speaking only households, I think from the demographic study we did, was in the low singles. It's a very low number, it's like 3 or 4%.
But if the parents are Spanish-speaking and they could get a postcard that then was a reminder for them to, because they might, in their own language, and they would be like, oh, and then the kids could be like, they could say, oh, you can sign up for these programs, where if they're just getting a full program in English.
There's definitely opportunities.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, like,
to
is there
figure out
something-
the areas where people aren't signing up for classes and figure out why they're not signing up for classes, and then figure out if we need to, how we need to address if there's a language barrier.
Well, if we
in that
wanted to do
area.
something with that, maybe it could be with Adelante, where they're giving out the food and safe passage and those sorts of things. That way you're not doing at the expense of a mailer, but you could be giving it out to people that are coming to areas that are specifically geared to Spanish speakers.
Like with the van going out, we changed up our marketing with that. So there's signs that go in the park a week before, English, Spanish.
Oh, that's great.
We have door hangers, English, Spanish, that our staff tries to get out and go really like within a mile from the park to put door hangers on for English and Spanish. But we need to do some, and it's on our list, and it actually is probably going out later this week, where we're inviting people to come and tell us how they use the program guide, how they use the website, how we use our registration system so that we can learn how people are using stuff out there. The Spanish on the website, we need to start being better at putting any PDF, like a flyer or that type of thing, in English or Spanish, because the PDFs won't change. The program guide itself is going to be difficult.
But then if the kids can help, because like at school, everything comes home with English and Spanish.
Yeah.
Like everything.
Flyers and stuff we can get a little bit better at having some availability.
If we have the reminder, then the kids can help them, like you're saying.
Yeah, the kids all, unless they've only been here for under a year, the kids learn English very quickly.
Minimal. Yeah.
Yeah, so they can.
As you said, it's the parents that are pushing the kids towards these programs. And I just wonder, the program guide certainly can't print and distribute 2 different languages. That'd be prohibitively expensive. If you were to put the program guide online in HTML as opposed to PDF, if it's in HTML, that Google Translate will translate that. But I don't know how, I don't know how the program guide is designed and how difficult it would be to get it into HTML as opposed to PDF.
Well, I want to just kind of take a little different turn on this. When it comes to public relations and marketing, most of our emphasis is on the programs that are offered through the catalog. My concern is we don't do enough public relations and marketing about the park district. Evidence of that in the flyers that we see when so many people think that we're a department of the city.
56%.
You think, okay, we're not doing something right here when people don't even know the park district exists after 60 years. So I think there's an opportunity there to educate our own community about who the park district is and what the park district does, besides just running quality programs.
I think that's a good idea. I know that in the program guide, that we've been putting in really interesting things occasionally, like they talked all about all about that, but people may still not understand that we're not part of the city. A lot of people would think that.
Sure. Michelle, I have a topic-specific question, and I know a lot of time and effort went into it. Part of it I see was impacted by the weather, and that was our 60th anniversary event and how we celebrated that. I know the video, et cetera, and I know the preview of that at the movie theater, but taking that aspect of the program at the movie theater and so forth, the events at the park, soccer fields, et cetera. Is there anything that you did in conjunction with the 60th anniversary that maybe this can be done or transferred to another part of our, program or PR, et cetera?
Well, we're still spending this whole year focusing on the 60th anniversary. So there's quotes in the program guide from people who answered and gave us quotes about what they love about CRPD. There's a post that goes out, should be going out weekly. I think I usually see it where she uses the responses that we got from people from surveys that we did. We're using a 60th logo on everything this year. So we're still trying. So if you have other ideas, we're open to pursuing them. So we're trying to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because I was envisioning, and similar to what I mentioned at the beginning, in reference to Friday's gathering, those were all elected officials. And the one event at the Canal Creek South, showing the movie, it was a very cold night, et cetera, so it wasn't conducive to a lot of community people in the time of the year that we had to pick because of the 60th anniversary timeline, but, community-wide activities, you know, that the families,
Yeah.
you know.
We have all of our, district-wide, events coming back unless weather prohibits us from doing them. So, you know, the flashlight egg hunt should happen this year. I can't guarantee it because it's supposed to happen in a couple weeks, so I don't know that it will actually happen. You know, we have 3 movies in the parks that'll be happening. We have 5 concerts that should be happening. So, I mean, all of our big events are all back.
Mm-hmm.
So, all of those will happen, weather permitting.
I wonder if we did very simple things, such as at the concerts, when we have a lot of people there, if in part of our message, we say, this is brought to you by, you know, Caneo Recreation and Park District, we are not the city, or I don't know how we would say it. A separate entity, or we're board members from Caneo Park and Rec because this is not part of the city. Rec and Park, Rec and Park, you know, the Park and Rec series kind of got that all. It really, that we are,
See, that's what a lot of people in our community come from other communities where the recreation was a department of the city. So
right.
it takes, you know, and is it that important to them? No, as long as they get the service that they're looking for, the classes they want, et cetera. So
That's the bottom line, yeah.
yeah.
If they get complaints, they usually call the city first anyway.
There you go.
Good idea.
We ought to put that on the website too, for complaints, call this.
Call the mayor.
Yeah.
Just one other thing, in public relations and marketing, most of the things you talk about here are sort of, and maybe that's really what marketing is, you know, it's one direction, but, you know, there are tools out there, including Zoom, but there are other tools as well, where you're interacting with the public. You're not just sending stuff out to the public, but back and forth, so.
Community engagement, public engagement.
Yeah.
And we are doing some of that, but we could probably do more.
Well, and I like 7.31, consider holding board field trips or off-site board
I
meetings.
was just gonna mention that.
I really like it when we do that. It really gets me connected to the park, and.
Yeah, that, I was gonna suggest that we have at least one board meeting each year at one of our community centers.
That's a good idea.
We talked about that a number of times before you were here, and I think you brought it up.
Yeah,
Remember,
yeah.
it's just a logistics possible problem.
It's, yeah, if you guys like making it record real time on the website with the tools we currently have, it gets a little harder. Like, we can do the, like record on your phone with Zoom, which might be enough for that purpose.
That's what I was gonna suggest, because I know for example, when the city has had some of their, review of the budget over at the library, it's not on TV.
Yeah.
It's just, you should.
Yeah, so those wouldn't be regular meetings. The regular meetings are here at Hillcrest. So if we had occasionally didn't have to work, like when we went to McRae, we didn't have the Zoom going.
Yeah, it wouldn't.
We recorded it, but we
It would be a public meeting, open, just like we would have anywhere else, like at the, Cameron Center, when it was still the Cameron Center.
Right.
You know, just hold it there. Yeah, it doesn't have all the maybe creature comforts, but the idea is, hey, we're gonna be in your neighborhood. And you make mention of that, and you put up flyers so Dos Vientos knows, hey, big show coming to town. It's, board of directors here, you know, just for you and your neighborhood, and, you know, promote it.
Oh, I liked it till you said that.
Oh.
I don't know that I want a lot of people coming, but I do like it.
Yeah.
I like to just, when we have gone in the bus, and we've gone and taken tours of things, and it's fun, and it kind of gives us a sense of, like, not just being in the building, like being out in the parks, walking around. I mean, we all do that on our own, but there's something about us all being there and kind of getting like, hey, this is what we are all about. Here's the new things that we're building, and here's the park that we're thinking of doing stuff. What do you think about that? And here's improvements we're doing. I mean, whenever we've done that, or like when we went to Sapwe and we had all of the community partners at Sapwe, kind of, I broke the guy's plan, I really hope he fixed it. You know, and we're there doing all of that stuff, I mean, it really, I think, is motivating for the board members
Yeah,
to
that's
get us
absolutely,
out of
yeah.
the boardroom and together.
Okay.
Well, and especially if we wanna try and actually go for the next election to put on the revenue measure, I think it's a great idea to go to the community centers and allow people to know that we're gonna be there. I mean, we could just post it on Nextdoor and, you know, and we wouldn't have to spend a ton of money and have to even spend money on flyers. And then that way people could come and then, you know, they get their 3 minutes and they could say, and maybe there's things that we don't even know that people want. But then it also puts a face with what's going on, and then when they see that, they might be like, oh, look, they actually really cared. They were in my neighborhood, and, yeah, they're doing a great job, and I want to give them more money.
Yeah.
I vote for this, you know?
I think it's a great idea.
Mhm.
I think our special presentation that night would be about that center, because we hear about all the different programs that happen, but this way just says, okay, this is what happens at this community center, here are our staff, whatever.
And that would be interesting to the residents near the center also.
Look at you, Doug.
And maybe you could record that portion of it.
Absolutely.
Gosh.
That might be something.
You know, not the whole meeting, but just, that way you could just record.
The video for
Yeah,
special
for the
presentation.
special presentation.
Quick question, Andrew. I've had about 4 individuals in the last, since Christmas, ask me about the Caneo Community Center. Are we in the permit process going through the city and some of this?
We are still in planning with them.
Totally in planning.
We're still in planning with them, yeah. So we put a pause to any further, like, construction and permit plans until we get through the planning, so.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's okay, 'cause there's gonna be a lag between planning approvals and money.
Money.
So,
Yeah, I was like, don't we not have the
So,
money
yeah,
for
so
that?
that's okay, you know,
With
that's fine.
being completely unfunded for construction, then, yeah, so.
Yeah.
Okay, wanna get on to sustainability and resiliency?
Take a short break.
Oh, right back.
I'll take one with you.
This weekend here, I don't even know if I read this one. It's been a while since I looked at this.
Elaine,
Maybe it's the guy that's in the chair. I
Yeah.
don't know.
this for something that... My mother is the whole, you have to look at the whole article, open up the whole page.
I saw the,
She's,
latest gas bill, Jim, that we paid for
yeah,
the
she's
pool.
that one, for that.
So there's someone
Where she rescued-
convert to electric heating and then put solar over the pool?
Yeah, I mean,
Was it double?
I actually, how much was it? I know we had an $11,000 one,
Well,
but.
the gas bill was
Was
about,
it even more?
twice as high as.
Twice as high would make sense, but 4 times, 'cause
No, well, it went from like 6,000 to 11,000, like 20 to 30. It was like ridiculous.
it was that high. I mean, I know it's cold rain pouring in that pool, and it's been cold at night and stuff, but wow, that's crazy.
I did see something, this is the coldest winter measured by it's the coldest winter, since, I think it was like 77, 78, in terms of temperatures, just temperature-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never used my heater this much. They're gonna have the gas fixed by May, and we don't need.
Of course.
Didn't you hear that? Like,
Yeah.
we're gonna have it all figured out by May.
Yeah, right.
I was like, I don't need my heater in May.
Yeah, at least
Do
you know
need
your-
my pool heater, though.
Your gas cooking will be cheaper now, so.
Anyway.
It's amazing.
This-
1920.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's something that...
1929, was that the stock market crash, George? You remember that taking place?
Yeah, right, that's before my time.
I hope so.
All right, we're almost done, and we still have to, we're on a regular agenda, not just so we still have the other stuff to go
How
through,
many
so.
more you want to cover tonight?
You guys-
So I'd like to knock it out. We just have sustainability and then a catch-all. So catch-all could be as much or as little as you guys want. but on sustainability and resiliency, our objective is to operate the district in an environmentally and economically sustainable manner. Our strategy is to evaluate new ideas, embrace change, and continuously move the district towards environmentally sustainable and cost-effective operations. So, we, in our goals, have a bunch of specific tangible things that we've done over the years, and a lot of them have to do with solar and conserving water and drought-tolerant landscaping. Any other things that you guys are kind of thinking about in environmental sustainability, or?
I had to look through it in detail, but, have we looked at all at as we're replacing vehicles and going toward electric vehicles?
So the Air Resources Board has rules about our equipment and what they have to run on, and I think we're just now starting to come up on some of those deadlines when things have to transition. Like when we're purchasing now, it's like, okay, this thing only has a capital expected life of this long, and that goes into when it has to be electric, so maybe I switch to electric now. And I think
fleet's taking a look at the mandatory programs, and we're assessing the need, like Jim's saying, as far as from our asset replacement. Like you guys know, with emissions and things like that, Tom's purchased different pieces of equipment because of requirements by CARB over the years. So with that, that's going to continue. But then, as Jim mentioned, with EV and things like that, it's going to get that's going to be a little bit more pressure in our face because of being in California and being a little bit more forward on those policies and such with EV vehicles.
So we are getting an EV truck?
We're on order, yeah.
We're going to have one.
Might take a while.
Yeah, pickup truck or?
Pickup truck, yep. So it might take a while.
Yeah, so back order on stuff, and then we were having a good conversation about this, but like, just imagine the shop, and when all the vehicles are parked, like how we currently operate, all the vehicles are just parked in the shop at the end of the day, and now all of them are gonna need a charger or some combo of charging in the facility that the vehicles are all stored. And do we have enough juice to do that?
Can you just quickly review, what is the mandate to?
Well, I don't think we can buy, 2035 is the no gas vehicles sold, no new gas vehicles sold by 2035. But like diesel, like our diesel engine, we're already.
Yeah, there's different tiers depending on how large your fleet is and timing. And so we're still going through some trainings with the state and going through that to see what to continue moving forward so we meet the requirements,
right,
but then also to be more sustainable in our approach to it. So not just to switch it all over like Jim said, and then we got millions of dollars in infrastructure to make sure that we can charge these things all at once. It's kind of like a phasing program. So,
because I guess I'm just a little pessimistic that whole thing would work. I mean, we don't even have reliable electricity now with all these power shutoffs, and I say, okay, now we have a fleet that our community relies on in a storm when the solar power is not as good as they normally would be, so now those chargers aren't working. You know, just like they showed some of the examples with the hurricanes and all the storm in Florida. There were no electrical vehicles there in the fleet to repair all the electric grid. It was all gas vehicles, because that's all that would run in an area where there was no electricity. So I just am very apprehensive about having to do that because it's just, I don't see that our electric system can support it and be reliable in it. So I would hate to have an entire fleet go electric and then you go down for a few days and...
Yeah, so I think it'll be a gradual thing. We'll have one truck, then it'll be, we have 5 trucks.
Staff's being cautious with that as well, just because of the demand and things, and then looking at our facilities as far as power requirements and stuff, so.
Do we have hybrid vehicles? I mean, could we just get hybrid?
We do have hybrid. The issue with us is because we are so medium duty with our trucks, with towing requirements and what we do, like what the services we provide. Majority of our trucks are half-ton or actually three-quarter-ton trucks. When you really look at
You could never go electric with those anyway, could you?
Currently, no. so it isn't available.
Yeah.
And so, and then it's, as technologies, move along and when it gets forced, it will be, things are gonna change as far as the manufacturing industry and stuff. So, but we're kind of in the middle range because we do have light duty, but then we have a lot of medium duty trucks.
Yeah, I would say a lot of your big trucks.
And even like our dump trucks and tractors and things like that, those, right now, yes, there are EV versions of it, but it might not be equal to what we need to serve the parks.
As we've seen with the Ford Lightning pickup truck.
We've all seen that.
Yeah, it just
I
doesn't
was
work.
just talking about that Ford Lightning pickup truck the other day at the school with my colleague. Thank you for, we all know about
She thinks she doesn't know anything about the lightning pickup truck.
You think so?
I think so.
I mean, to get a bolt of lightning to strike over here.
Yeah, I guess I don't. I guess I should.
Yeah. And to further my concern about that is the emphasis is for environmental sensitivity into going electric. However, what do we do with all these batteries when they disappear? I mean, not disappear, when they no longer function, they just don't disappear. They become hazardous waste. And so it's just like, okay, why are we doing this? Anyhow, I don't want to get too high on my soapbox, but...
So,
Well, just know
where
that
was your strength, weakness, or opportunity, or
Thank you.
in that, okay?
Thank you.
I think, you could go all the way around on that one.
Well, so our approach has been not at all bleeding edge and frankly not cutting edge. We're following the rules is kind of what we're doing. So we're trying to stay with the pack. We're not trying to, in terms of new untested technology, but we do things like, our solar carports and stuff. We're helping with the grid where we can. If things pencil out, we can get a reasonable return. We'll add more of solar when things look right. I'm hoping, even, the new government grant programs have opportunities for solar carports at other facilities. Mm-hmm. They recognize that we're pushing power in the grid beyond what we need at that site, that we get some sort of credit for doing that kind of stuff,
The technology is changing so fast that it's hard to really,
Electric vehicles.
even completely make long-term goals.
Yeah, it's terrible, yeah. Well, not terrible, it's a good thing, but,
Right.
it's
Yeah, things
challenging.
change a lot.
Transfer to,
Sorry, I heard.
or what, either way.
The city's putting solar on the roofs at the teen center and the Global Center, right?
Yes.
Not carports.
Not carports.
Yeah, they didn't need as much, area because those buildings are so large. So, based on the proposals they received, so.
What do you mean they don't need so much area?
Because they have so much roof space for the panel, and the demand of those buildings. So originally they were looking at possibly doing carports and the roof. And once they studied more and looked at what they needed, then it was roof only.
Gray water,
All right.
or is that just too expensive?
No, that's something to look at. Stormwater or gray water capture, gray water reuse, stormwater,
It would have been nice if we had it this year.
I know.
Yeah, a year ago said, why would you do that? You never have any kind of rain like that.
Actually, that brings up a topic that we covered yesterday at our, talk about later, California Association of Rec and Park Districts, talking to Deputy Director of the Office of Emergency Services. And in the conversation, it came up with park and rec facilities, especially during this time, if they knew that they could, especially like the areas prone to flooding, if they could direct this water to a recreational facility where it could absorb the water, they'd want to be able to partner with that type of an organization. And they just said, hey, just tell us if you can do that because we'll make arrangements. So that type of thing, could we participate in some way to use our facilities, whether it be flood control or whatever, for that whole sustainability and resiliency concept. And I think there are options out there that we may not have necessarily thought of, probably because it hadn't rained for a long time. But there are other ways, I'm sure, as well.
I mean, underground.
Right. Yeah, I just read about the city of Santa Monica has a $100 million stormwater capture facility that then treats the stormwater to potable underneath a parking lot in the city.
Yeah.
So it's like a 1.6 million gallon tank
Yeah.
that is, capturing rainwater and then turning it into.
When did they build it?
When? It said they've been working on it for 10 years.
So is it operational now that we've?
Yeah, literally, it went online in November, so they couldn't have picked a better time.
Literally,
Yeah.
it's like Vegas, they should go to, whoever did that needs to go to the craps table right now.
Yeah.
But they're fighting the district situation too.
Yeah.
It's been for years, millions of dollars.
What came to mind was like one of our facilities like Canal Creek Park, where we've got a creek going right through the park.
And so in prelim stages, we talked to the county for opportunities like that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's the balance of.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
Land and things, but we
Right.
were looking at it, and unfortunately, it would have been like a mine, and you would have maybe a playground in a parking lot versus because of the area, the depth in the area.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but we'll continue to do that for sure.
That or,
So looking for opportunities like
Old
that.
Meadows also has a
yeah.
creek.
But just, things like that where it's a little outside of what we normally consider, but with now the real emphasis for groundwater storage, seems like there may be more opportunities for things like that.
Yeah, I would imagine the opportunity for us will be, somebody's got a great idea, we're maybe along a stream channel, we have the land, and they say, hey, we'll do all the stuff underground, but let us just do all that, and then you can put a park back on top of it.
Right.
And, yeah, something like that, we'd go,
Maybe the city
we won't
would do
charge
that.
you. Yeah, so we are so whenever studies do come up, we often tell the city or Cayugas, like, hey, yeah, include us in solutions, like when you see stuff, say something. So some of that occasionally comes up, like we solved the flooding at Orchard and Kelly Road Orchard and Kelly, anyway, that intersection at Orchard and.
The freeway?
Yeah, by the freeway.
Orchard Village?
Yeah, so we have the stormwater retention basin on that park. The city's like, can we dig a hole on your park so that we can not only recharge the groundwater, but we can keep that intersection from flooding? And we told them, sure. So they did that.
Orchard and Michael.
Orchard and Michael, that's what it is, Orchard and Michael. But yeah, so they know that we're game. They know we'll talk to them. I think the city's groundwater study includes our wells in it, so they understand what the water quality is on the wells that we have and what the groundwater looks like around the whole community. So we basically hold ourselves out as, hey, we are game to solve problems. And yeah.
I think for strengths, you have, you partners with the water district in the city for the groundwater. Also, all the conversions from grass to drought tolerant throughout. I mean, that's a strength that you guys have definitely. The water bill looks great, Andrew. You've done a wonderful job on that.
Yeah, last 2 months.
Tom could never figure this out.
I don't know why.
He's got it totally figured out.
It took an Andrew.
Yeah, 50% less water, well done.
Yeah.
I'll let Tom know.
I mean, you're really saving us money. That's great.
Yeah, it's been fun to do those reports, though. You actually can put rainfall.
Of course, you know what the problem is? It's all downhill from here.
I know.
Exactly.
What is this, like the 35-year? Like, if you don't stay here that long, you're not going to see this again.
Anything else on environmental, sustainability, resiliency?
I would say just a weakness, which is kind of an overall thing, is there are a lot of these opportunities that we don't have control over. Like, we may want to do something, but there's some other agency involved that either is the gatekeeper in whether we can or can't, or they have to be a willing partner to make it happen. And we may be willing and they may not. So it's just, the challenge of trying to, coordinate with more likely than not other public agencies.
It's like, it'd be great if we could cover all of our parking lots with solar panels, but you'd have to have net metering to make it worthwhile, and the state says, no, you can't do that.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Well, I have one other thing. If we go to the strategic plan overview, Turn the page.
Done with sustainability?
Yeah, I was gonna do a, catch-all what else, but,
Well, I just really wanted to quickly on facilities, it says update the district master plan, and that was supposed to be done in 2022. And I don't think we need to like hire a consultant and redo the whole master plan, but, you know, I think about 6 months ago, I opened it up and read it, and we have new parks, we have new positions. I would say 90% of it is still current, but we might want to just do an update to include our new parks. We have new, you know, a lot of new positions, like I'm saying, put in some of those things. I don't think that the overall plan has changed, but the district has changed a bit. So it would just be an update, not a redo, just an update. Because I know we were thinking, well, we don't want to do a big review of it till we know what the city's doing. The city may not get their master plan done in 10 years. So just a little bit of an update on it. So I don't know who would be reading through that whole thing. I don't know if we need to have a committee to do it or,
well, one big thing, and this actually fits under this discussion and kind of what else, catch-all. A big thing I'm struggling with is how to approach parks that don't meet our master plan guidance. So right now, our master plan says we don't really want parks under 2 acres. So if someone's trying to give us a piece of property, we don't want to take somebody's leftover, like fragmented kind of property they couldn't deal with. So the master plan says the smallest neighborhood park would be 2 acres, but all the action in the future is going to be multifamily in denser areas where the landowner won't have necessarily 2 acres to give us. And so they're going to want to give us something, or the trade-off will be Quimby or park, and they're going to say, well, I kind of want to give you a park because that would lower my Quimby fee for the park, and it would also be good because then I'd have a park right next to my apartment project, and so it's kind of a win-win, right? So we don't have that as a concept in the master plan. In fact, it makes it a lot easier when we tell people that little sliver of land you want to give me, it's not a park, doesn't meet our definition of a park, so just write me a check for the Quimby fees and we'll go spend it in a way that serves your neighbor, your residents in that neighborhood. So this is coming up right now, like the Hodenkamp property is submitted again, and they want to give us about half an acre?
3/4 of an acre.
3/4 of an acre?
Is that where we have
Of the 6 acre, yeah, the pumpkin, basically they want to give us, there's a piece of property that's within the floodplain between the 2 big oak trees, including the 2 big oak trees on the corner.
Oh.
And the land in between, I don't know if you noticed, but it's got an underground stormwater detention basin as well. So it would have a underground stormwater detention basin, and so they want to give us that. So then we would be managing a public park on Teal Boulevard, right in front of a 4-story, 400-unit apartment project, or whatever it is, how many?
Yeah, it's mixed use, commercial down below, but then 300 to 400,
Yeah.
I forget the final.
So 300 or 400
The final
units. So
unit.
that's a thing that we're gonna have to be facing. Do we accept that as a Quimby offset?
well, that's something to discuss.
Completely satisfy us? Do we want to do something different?
It'd be nice to
Create a
know,
new
like, how much
category.
you could get there if it would be worthwhile on just 3/4 of an acre. What would you be able to even put there?
Not much.
Not much.
That's the tricky part. That's why our master plan has.
Well, because you can't do anything under the oak trees.
No.
That's half of the
And
3/4 is
like,
very
we're
limited.
a
Why would
ways
we-
out from them.
So why are you thinking you want to change that then?
Since we're being approached.
We're being asked, like,
Yeah, just
Okay.
opportunity.
it's like, hey, we're park deficient in that specific area already
Well, it's
because of
something to think
299.
about.
Maybe the only way you can get any kind of park space in there, otherwise we're
Those
gonna
oak
be
trees.
permanently park deficient.
Yeah, and that's kind of what Jim was alluding to, just because it's not rural, single-family suburbia anymore. It's turning into a lot denser, and land is harder to come by. And so it's really trying to balance our books. And
It might be
people
that we have to look at it on an individual basis. We could take out that one specific requirement for the amount of acreage, but we have to look at it on an individual basis,
So
put in
it-
some type of wording.
Yeah, and so it's hard to work at the, it's just like hard to figure it out, because I'm trying to, I've lived here my whole life, I haven't lived in a dense urban area, but I'm trying to imagine the use that particular facility will get our responsibility to manage it versus maybe their responsibility, like we put it off on them? Because I don't know, would we maintain it to a level that they expect in front of their brand-new apartment project? What happens when the homeless guy sleeps there all day long?
Well, if we put in the park, it'd probably be our responsibility, but the people who live around Irving Drive and there's a lot of apartments right in that area, it would also be accessible to them if we put it in. If we can put in something that would be worthwhile. I mean, there's definitely enough people living around that area that could use it.
Yeah.
And maybe just having, you know, some play equipment and a picnic bench and, you know, a place to barbecue, maybe that would be enough. But it would just be a matter of we want to do it or not. I mean, I used to live right across the street from there, our first house.
Yeah,
was
there's
right
a
there.
bunch of cute little houses in there.
Yeah, it's kind of a fun little neighborhood.
It is.
It's all these little funky custom houses, and
Mhm.
we bought that when we were first married.
Yeah, it was a neat
But
area.
we used to have to go over to Glenwood or
Yeah.
the library park or Caneo Community, and so that's getting in a car always, where a lot of people that are right around there, they could push a stroller over there if it was a little park. I'm just saying it could benefit a neighborhood. You would have to decide, is this something that would be viable that we want to keep up? Is it on Lombard? Would it be on Lombard or would it just be on Teal
It'd be on Teal
Boulevard?
Boulevard right there.
On
Where
the
they set up the.
Because I don't really think we should be interfering with the taco truck on Lombard.
No, they could still be there.
Okay,
And then we could get tacos and take the kids to the park.
yeah.
Have
that would
you
be
ever
kinda good.
been, so in Woodland Hills, right by, on the south side of the boulevard, they converted an old fire station to a park, and it's a very small lot, and it is adorable, and they made it like a firefighter park themed, but they have really high fences because it is a very small area that you don't want your child like just running off
Yeah.
because you are all
Right
on
field.
streets.
Right.
But it's an urban park, and that lot has to be, there's no way it's an acre. It's like, right there in between DeSoto and, Calvin over there, inside that neighborhood. And it's an older neighborhood with super cute houses in it,
So
but
DeSoto and what, my school's on DeSoto.
are you're at a Serenia? or-
Serenia.
Yeah, so it's right in the neighborhood, right by you, but it used to be a fire station, and it's probably 1 block from Ventura Inn. And my friends had a birthday party there when they first opened it, and
I'd love to go
so
see it,
cool.
if
Yeah, we
you
should
could,
look at
if you could get the address.
It's,
Do you see it? There's not grass, but it's like,
Costano Fire Station 84 Park is what they call it.
yeah, it's a really cool, like,
Yeah, it's just south of Ventura Boulevard on Canoga Avenue and, Costano.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
no, that's right,
Toronto
it's
is-
by my school.
yeah, so it's right in that,
Go take a look at it.
Oh, I will.
it's really
So small
cool, I
urban
think.
parks has not been our business, and so
Right.
what is involved with that is an interesting thing for us to start to
I
deal with.
was gonna say.
Does it make sense? Go ahead.
The, thought that I had in mind was we would need to develop some guidelines. Excuse me, what is the expectation for a park that's, you know, less than 2 acres? Say, well, we can, if it's between 1 and 2 acres, then you need to be able to accommodate these amenities. You know, and if it's, whatever the number is, if it's less than half an acre, we can't use it, or if it's less than 3/4, less, whatever that number is. But it has to accommodate some things that you do. In Glendale, we had a number, actually, I had, because I was there, but they still have, a number of urban parks. One was called the Chess Park. It was a commercial piece of property on Brand Boulevard. The property burned down. The city bought the lot and put in a bunch of chess tables and some landscaping. And that was a chess park. And it was almost just like a wide alley. There wasn't much to it. We also have on Wilson Park, just a playground and some backgammon tables and some grass and trees. Across from Station 21, which is the main station, 2 single-family dwelling lots became available. City bought them and put in a park. Again, just a playground, some turf area, and a covered, little gazebo-covered picnic table. That's all that it is. But there, you know, so one's in the downtown area, one is in a little bit outside of town, the other is more in a rural area, a more residential area. So, and those are all very, like, 2 single-family dwelling lots, not very big.
Yeah.
So there are some examples of what can be done there, but I think what you need to do is set up the guidelines. Well, what can we accept, and then what are the limitations? You know, when you have a third, 3/4 of an acre, and half of it's covered with oak trees,
Yeah.
and the other half has a, structure beneath it, okay, you can't put too much on top of it. So what is it? It's gonna be turf or bark chips. And that's it. So it's just like, okay, that's not gonna work. But it's not gonna work because it doesn't meet our guidelines. So then what are our guidelines? What can we set up as far as that area? And then what I also say is it has to be within this park planning area, zone, unit. Say, okay, within this area is the only what areas that we will accept that reduction in size. And it's targeting Thousand Oaks Boulevard in that area. Say, okay, in that area, we have another category, and it has to meet these guidelines, and we'll consider it.
And that's the kind of thing you'd write into a master plan, so that's,
Yeah.
that all
Yeah,
came full
we covered that
circle.
up.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we're at a point in time, this is new, that we need to assist staff, Jim and Andrew, and to help give them guidelines similar to what Doug was saying. I think we need to establish new policy guidelines for parks under 2 acres or whatever the statistics of a new park was gonna be. So I think we need, as a board, to help staff create a new policies, to create a new category, et cetera, so they kind of know what they're, working with and what the board, will accept.
Well, then staff should help you guys by coming up with stuff, going finding it, but like, I guess I'm asking it to be symbiotic, so if you guys know of places or parks or standards or rules somewhere, because you've been somewhere and you're like, I know a guy that works in Glendale who knows the parks and he can send a thing or, whatever you guys, if you have
I think
anything.
that we need some examples of
It's-
what other
it's-
people have done and then say, oh, well, we like this, we don't like that, and
Yeah, we haven't done urban parks, and that's gonna be what our future is, because there's hardly anybody left that could possibly give away 2 acres. There's not many left.
Yeah, well, I mean, the 2 acre minimum was, what, 50, 60 years ago, and when that was set in stone, and that's when everybody was single-family homes spread out with lots of green space, but
Yeah.
the city's now building multifamily dwellings in a fairly compact area. The city's planning is changing, our planning needs to change.
and if you want to just take a walk to the park with your kids, maybe having a small playground, a picnic table, sitting under an oak tree and reading a story, maybe that's better than if you have nothing.
Well, especially for people who, I had a really small backyard when my kids were little, and I couldn't imagine not having a backyard at all, but all we had was the little Tykes plastic slide they climbed up, and, so I could see where we definitely need to make this available, because those apartment buildings aren't gonna have anything, and these are where the new families are gonna live, because there's not enough single-family homes for them, and some of them can't afford to buy a single-family home here.
Yeah, I mean, like, my daughter lives in a condo complex. I don't know, there are a couple hundred, maybe 100 condos, and they're surround a grassy area. Kids love to just go downstairs and run around the grass area. There's nothing there other than grass and a sidewalk, but, and some bushes they can run around.
Yeah.
It's something, it's better than nothing.
Yeah, 2 acres is too expensive now in Thousand Oaks.
Well, let's be thinking about it, and then we can revisit, and hopefully we can have an updated master plan by the end of this year. Not a new one, just an updated one.
Yeah.
What else is, just anybody's on their mind, something that might land in the strategic plan somewhere, a big idea, a big thing to evaluate, to see if it's a good idea?
Well, it's kind of what we talk about with this whole general plan is the coordination with the city's general plan, the master plan and the general plan, which I know we're kind of waiting on them to finalize that. But how do we prepare for that, or at least just document that that's in the wings and we're trying to respond, but until that's defined, we can't. In the meantime, we're just working with them.
Well,
unless there's something that can be done.
Yeah, I mean, so is that a question or just a statement? So the city's doing elements, and we actually have the opportunity to comment on their open space element, or parks and open space element. we haven't seen the final draft, and no one has, but we saw a draft, we were able to comment on it, and remember, we hired, I don't know if you guys remember this, we hired RRM
Yes.
to help us with that, so they actually helped us even write the comments, like, I mean, we looked at them, but they helped as well and saw stuff, so at least on the wording in the Parks and Open Space element, we've given them back comments. Land use map,
we haven't seen it since May of 2021, right, was the last time, right?
Yeah. So,
Well, probably we as board members could have a little homework and just kind of skim through our master plan if you haven't done it seriously, kind of see if there's something that pops out.
You already smashed my idea, you and Andrew, when we met.
no, we can totally redo that place if you want, we just have to
I think we
reopen
could sell it to the equestrian.
reopen the entire Canal Creek master plan to see how we wanna let the community in,
Doug is gonna help us.
invite them in for the conversation.
Waverly. We can bring back the rodeos and horse shows.
Back what?
The rodeo.
Oh,
Yeah, give them a nice quality horse arena to like have stuff in.
Oh.
And then,
You were any-
and then the theater that I didn't even realize was already there. Look, outdoor amphitheater.
No, there's a guy, what's his name, RJ Keys has approached us and wants to do he was gonna make it a membership only, but he has approached ETI, he has an idea for a whole bunch of capital facilities to the equestrian facility. He says it's all gonna be privately funded for a nonprofit he's creating, and that he wants to come and give us a proposal, so he is working on a proposal.
Is he a real estate agent?
No. He works for a, autism?
Yeah, something in healthcare, yeah.
Yeah, some healthcare agency working with autistic kids in healthcare, but he does like the IT or something, the finance or IT for it, grant writing or something. Anyway, so he is a guy who's, I think I've mentioned this to somebody, but he's a gentleman who is literally going door to door, trying to get people to sign a petition. So somebody's actively out there trying to elevate the equestrian center facilities at Canal Creek West, but we had to let him know that he couldn't make it a members-only facility, so that was
I don't like that.
part of the news that he didn't like to hear.
Oh, well, I think that's silly.
Because I don't think that helped his performa.
No. I saw like 20 donkeys in one of the turnouts this
Yeah.
weekend, those people would be mad. Yeah.
So,
No, I more mean like just elevating that area, like you go to the Day of the Horse and like the sound system is, you can't even tell what they're saying. I don't know if you guys have been out there in a while, but it's pretty rough, you know, and like for being an equestrian town.
Well, I think it's nice that since you're an equestrian, you want to elevate it as an
I
equestrian.
am not an equestrian. I am
Your kids
a
are.
horse mom.
Yeah.
I don't ride.
Yeah, I wanted to redo it in something completely different, because I thought, what's this thing doing here?
Well, no,
I mean-
but I think the way you sell it is that you give them a better facility and they don't need all of it. Then we add some other things over here.
okay, moving right along.
Okay.
See, we're just gonna leave it a dirt ball.
no, I mean, if we want to revisit, so this is actually, the process would be if we wanted to revisit and try to reopen any of our, because we have the master plan for the whole district, but each park, at least each park of significance, has a park plan. Canal Creek has a book, the Canal Creek master plan, it's all the quadrants. So we would just go and say, hey, we're thinking of doing A, B, C, and D, or we're looking for input. We start a conversation about what that would look like. So we invite the community in to have that. And that's totally cool. It's just a big pull.
So we can't solve that tonight.
But that is a thing we can put on the,
Definitely.
Canal Creek West and Canal Creek.
That's something to look at, definitely.
Because it is, a lot of people do say, what's the deal with that property?
Yeah.
It's a big property, it appears underutilized until you say, well, the people that have horses like just riding around the property.
Yeah.
Can we also add to that all of the, I say all, like we've got dozens of them, but any undeveloped park sites or anything else that, whether it has a plan or not, to revisit that?
Hmm?
Yeah.
that will kind of come up with an inventory of everything left.
Mhm. Or underdeveloped too, as the planning people like to say.
Suburban park.
Places with opportunities.
Yeah, you know, that if, you know, Andrew or the park planning specialist had their druthers to say, oh man, this thing is just not operating to the capacity that it could, it has so much more potential, if only we could.
Well, I'm sure it's on the 10-year plan. Every park is on a 10-year plan, isn't it?
Not necessarily every park, but a lot of them are, yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And some of those undeveloped parcels are being put on the capital 10-year
And I
plan.
was gonna say, the ones that haven't been developed in a long time, I know they're on a plan. Because I went and asked Tom one time, and he's like, yes, that one is going to be, I mean, he had like the exact time. So, I mean.
How do you guys feel about, this is a good opportunity for me to get your input on just sort of like, do we spend energy, because if we're looking at Canoe Creek West, so one of the things we get asked and have to say no to a lot is large events.
Well, we already said we
try
were
to
gonna
convert
talk about
anything, do we wanna put effort into other than just saying no? Or like, do we wanna try to be a fairgrounds with the facilities we have, or do we wanna literally say, you're asking for a regional thing, the Ventura County Fairgrounds are where you need to go? That's just not our deal.
Well, we talked about that at the last strategic planning. I brought that up at the very end. Probably everyone was asleep by then. Saying we have to rethink how we're going to do our events, all of them, like what we're going to do.
I actually think that park, I don't know why the chili cook-off wasn't kind of pushed over there when everyone asked to be back in the dirt. I could actually deliver that.
Well, we were gonna talk about the
Literally
whole
be up
thing.
there.
What kind of fees are we gonna charge? What are we considering a nonprofit?
Yeah.
Do we want to not use them at all? Do we wanna charge, more fees for things? Do we not wanna do anything? Do
Well,
we
I
wanna
was thinking that
respect?
was just with our existing 4 big events, and you really wanted to drill into like, what, is it worth it having these? I'm saying we are getting requests for things like, well, now the Scandinavian Festival wants to come.
Well, that's what I was saying. We have to rethink it.
Yeah, so.
We have to
Instead of being
rethink the
a
whole
CLU?
thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's an issue over there.
CLU doesn't, oh.
No, they don't.
Okay, so we have to rethink this, and if we are going to do it, we have to charge more. But that's
I
a
would
whole
say
nother
something,
topic
but-
that we said we were gonna talk about.
Yeah, and I agree.
Okay.
I think that's
Yeah.
something that
Yeah.
we should talk about.
I mean, I think that that's something we should talk about. I mean, I think we all have different feelings on it, but we need to talk about that. And make some sort of a statement, and I guess that could go into the master plan too.
And this is a big undertaking, because whatever we try to do, it'll be environmental studies, traffic studies, noise studies, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars on studies.
Well, it could just be a study of we don't wanna do it. And that doesn't cost
Yeah,
us
no.
anything. So, that's another study,
Right.
so, all right.
Okay, so you guys are getting tired. We do have like the normal stuff to wrap up with. This was great. I appreciate you guys going through both those. We'll start to staff will take it. We have like little tiny things that we know that we want to tweak. We'll give you a red line strikeout of what we want to kind of look at. You'll get a chance to look at the red line strikeout a couple times before we final it. But all your good input has been super awesome.
So we're through with item 9A?
I think so, yeah, thank you.
All right, well, then we will quickly go through the rest of this. Anybody have any questions or comments on reports and announcements? Good. No, it's too late, I'm sorry. You had a chance and you blew it, so.
I was trying to look at what page I said I was gonna make a comment on. It was 66. Under our recreation, those community centers. Oh, Park in the Park.
Canceled.
Not happening.
Okay, it's not, but back to his plan for Dos Vientos versus the other parks that it had been taking place.
No, it was at Caneo Creek North. Just Dos Vientos runs that event, so that's why it's under Dos Vientos, because they were reporting out on it. So it was at Caneo Creek North. Unfortunately, the grass is way too wet for it, and so they have picked another date. You should see it on social media that it's been canceled and another date has been
Well,
picked.
it says
so
in one
hopefully-
place it's Caneo Creek North, and then another it says it's Dos Vientos. In your report, it says, Dos Santos, and on my calendar, it's
The center is running it.
The Dos Santos Center is running it, but its location was at Caneo Creek North.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Okay.
so it's being rescheduled.
All right,
You'll also notice on social media, I'll wait till my report.
yeah, please. So nothing on the reports and announcements, department reports, parks,
I do not have any.
good man.
Yes.
Recreation,
The only thing I'll tell you is Caneo Community Center has no electricity, and we do not know when we will be getting electricity
Oh,
back.
really?
Oh,
So
gee.
indoor programs are canceled for the weekend until we find out more information. Outdoor programs will continue
And when did that start becoming an issue?
today.
Oh, just
You'll see
today?
that on social media.
Is it
Oh,
just the center, or is that part of the community without power?
The whole park.
It's the park, yeah.
Huh,
Park specific.
park specific, interesting, okay.
Transformer.
All right, so that's it for, recreation?
You have this in your, look at me, I'm sorry, you have this in your, packet. Every year, Recreation does goals for our division.
oh, yeah.
So you can take it, look at it, and feel free to call me if you have any questions. With that, I do not have anything else.
Okay.
Okay.
You still awake up there, Melissa?
Yes, and I have no report.
Hey!
You should have held up a sign. Got
Okay.
bed.
That's right.
Gone to bed.
General manager's report.
Next week are staff budget meetings all week. I'm gonna be out the following week, so not next week, the week after, on a family trip, and Rochelle will be acting general manager. The Gratitude Circle nominations are in, and I am handing you out your ballots. These are for you to pick 1, 2, 3 out of the list. You will choose 1, 2, 3, please, and it's 1 is best. 1 is the one you really wanna make sure gets it to 2 and 3, and then obviously those without a score will not get a score, and we are going to then tally those up, and hopefully a couple people will emerge out of that. Oops, people are voting right away. This was good, this was good. Vote, if you feel like you can vote now, great, if not, you're welcome to take it home. And with that, I'm available for questions.
Now, go over the criteria, because I just saw one on there that I would not, have thought of as
I
supporting.
don't have the memo in front of me, but I think they had to have been at least, they have to be a strong, extraordinary supporter of park, rec, or open space. They have to have done it for at least 5 years. It has to be an individual. I think that's the basic. Not currently employed by the district. Or an elected official. It can't be a current elected official. But that's about it. It's fairly broad. I can send you the memo again, though, with the
That's
criteria.
okay, I just.
Okay, does anybody have any questions of the general manager? Moving right along, director's reports. Director Nichols.
On March 4th, I was at the Mardi Gras Ball. On March 6th, I had the CARPD Conference Committee meeting. On March 10th, I was at the Teen Center event. March 15th, yesterday, I had the CARPD Board of Directors meeting in Sacramento, along with a legislative orientation with several assembly members. We met Assemblymember Quirk Silva, who's from the Fullerton area. She's the chair on the Committee of Sports, Entertainment, and Tourism. And so we were able to meet with her for about 20 minutes, just to introduce ourselves, let her know that the organization existed. She was very interested in the bill that we're sponsoring for the Brown Act amendment. And then we met with Assemblymember Blanca Pacheco, who's from the Downey area, and she is the author, sponsor, I get the two confused, who's actually carrying the bill forward on behalf of CARPD, so we're able to thank her. She's a rookie Assembly member, so she's brand new. Both Quirk Silva and Blanca Pacheco came out of the City Council realm, so they were in the City Council before that. Then we met with Jeffrey Roth, who's the legislative director for Senator Ana Caballero, who's in the district change. She did have the Monterey, San Benito County areas in addition to portions of Fresno, Madera, and Kern, but now they're all in the San Joaquin Valley area. So the area that they left behind currently doesn't have elected officials, so they're doing both of them. So they got their hands full. But it was very interesting to go through the process. The place is just buzzing with activity nonstop. I mean, you'd think you're in the middle of a subway station, just people flying around all the time. After we finished meeting with them, we actually started our board meeting, and then our lobbyist, Alyssa, had arranged to have Lori Nezera come speak to us. Again, she's the Deputy Director for Planning, Preparedness, and Prevention at the OES. David Takearts, who is the Interim Division Chief for CalPERS, came and spoke to us about stakeholder relations. And then Cedric Mitchell, Director of Office of Grants and Local Assistance, Departments of Parks and Recreation, spoke to us with potential grant opportunities. So it was a little overwhelming, very educational, made some interesting contacts, and I think it was just basically the CARPD kind of getting a foothold in some of these organizations, agencies, as well as meeting some of the staff and the representatives. And everybody, I mean, who can say no to recreation and parks, So everyone was very receptive, was very appreciative of our taking the time. And I must say, Alyssa and Sharon did an excellent job of coordinating this, getting things together, even making arrangements for, little things like having a stickered name tags. I mean, the assembly members, thank you so much for wearing name tags. So many people don't do this. And I thought, okay, she thought of that. And then she'd actually arranged to have a conference room for us so that when the assembly member had 15 minutes, they just knew right where to come and meet us. Thank you so much for doing this. I wish more people would do this. So obviously she's, watching out for us and knowing what to do. And I think we're already seeing evidence of the dividends coming forward from that. So I'm looking forward to just good exposure throughout the state on what recreation park districts are and aren't. Most of these folks don't even know what the difference is. Like I said, you come from Fullerton, you come from Downey, never heard of a special rec and park district before. So it's educational for them, educational for us. So I think we should see some results, if not in a couple years, certainly within 3 to 4 years, just from some of the seeds that we're planting. So that concludes my report.
Busy. Good, thank you. Director Cusworth.
I went to a lot of the things that you were there. The one thing that I went to that no one was at is they've started a lecture series at the Stagecoach Inn Museum, and Wyatt McCrae was the lecturer on Sunday. And what I loved about it is one of the things that Wyatt said in his presentation was, yes, here the Stagecoach Inn and McCrae Ranch, we're together in everything that we do, and we are both promoting the history and heritage of this county, and we're Valley, and we're working together on this. And from his lecture, 2 of the docents from the Stagecoach Inn approached me and said they want to also be docents at McCrae Ranch. And there's just a real building of community, I feel, between our 3 historical museums, especially McCrae Ranch and Stagecoach, and a little bit at Chumash. Maybe Barbara can come and talk at Stagecoach next year at their speaker series. But that gave me a lot of joy when he said that.
Yeah. So you've been pushing for that since you came on the board.
That was one of my major things I wanted to do, was to unite our historical communities, to be like one entity. So some of the things I've tried haven't been as successful, but at least I think we're, building a sense of community. I think together we're better. So.
Absolutely. Oh, that's great.
Director Buss.
I also went to the Mardi Gras Ball and to the Center reopened. I'm not going to talk about my other event because it was illegal. I found out today.
You went to an illegal event and did it.
I'm not going to talk about it.
You said you didn't leave footprints, so that's
I didn't.
okay.
I thought it was okay.
You already talked about that illegal event.
Yeah. Well, no. I thought I was
Director
doing
Lang.
something good.
Ditto, Marissa, went into those tents.
Okay, about the only event I went to that didn't hear anybody else, I went to the Spring Arts and Crafts Fair for Orchard, and you said in your blurb it wasn't the best weather, but still looked like we had a good turnout, and there were a lot of vendors there, and, I managed to only buy one thing. There were a lot of things that would have been tempting up there, but, and how many years have been doing that now? 30-some? Yeah. So it was a good event, and,
I want to say 32.
Oh, wow.
I could be wrong.
yeah. So I enjoyed that. I think that was the only other thing that I had been to, and the taxes are going along, with Bob mobbed over at the tax center. So, we had the, CRPD Sports Summit, over at the Global, was it the Global or Teen Center? Global Center. That's too late. We didn't have a great turnout. I think maybe there were, 10 or 15 representatives there, or something like that. A lot of soccer people and a couple of baseball people. We did have one rugby guy and a few others, so, it was useful. At our AYSO meeting, they presented the information about the fee increase, and, I think Bob did a pretty good job of presenting that. So, thank you for getting him all that information. So I think that's it. Let's see, request for status reports and items for subsequent agendas. Anybody know? Do we have, I forgot to ask the first time, do we have any public, 9:15 at night, waiting to speak? No, okay. So I apologize, forgot to ask our first public session, so. We do not have need for an executive closed session, right?
Next week, we have a special meeting at 5 for a closed session.
Yeah.
Next board meeting, yeah.
All right, so with that, we're adjourned.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for going through all that.